The wedding cake stood perfect under crystal lights. 3 tiers of buttercream roses and delicate piping that had taken Emily 3 sleepless nights to create. But when the photographer called family forward for portraits, her mother's hand shot out like a traffic guard. "Not you," she hissed, and Emily felt something inside her crack clean through. She wasn't a guest at this wedding. She was staff, invisible. Erased from her own sister's celebration by the people who were supposed to love her. Standing alone outside on cold concrete while champagne glasses clinked inside, Emily finally understood. She'd never been family. She'd been useful. And tonight, that ended. If you want to see how far a woman can fall before she learns to fly, stick around until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The February wind cut through the thin fabric of Emily's dress, a pale yellow monstrosity her mother had chosen specifically because it washed out her complexion and made her look sickly under photographs. She knew this because she'd heard her mother say exactly that to Aunt Carol 3 weeks ago while they stood in the bridal boutique laughing behind their champagne flutes. "Emily can wear the yellow," her mother had said, voice dripping with casual cruelty. "It doesn't matter what she looks like. She'll be in the background anyway." Now Emily sat on the concrete barrier outside the River Oaks Country Club, mascara cutting black rivers down her cheeks, and wondered how she'd let it get this far. How she'd spent 28 years trying to earn love from people who saw her as nothing more than free labor with a pulse. The bass from the reception music thumped through the walls. Inside, her younger sister Melissa was probably dancing with their father, the special daddy-daughter dance Emily had never gotten. Not at her own wedding 5 years ago, which her parents had refused to attend because they didn't approve of Daniel. Funny how that marriage had imploded within 18 months, and the first thing her mother had said was, "I told you so," instead of, "Are you okay?" Emily's phone felt heavy in her trembling hand. She'd scrolled to his contact 3 times already, thumb hovering over the call button before pulling back. It was pathetic, wasn't it? Running to him the moment things got hard. Except things had been hard for years, decades even, and she'd white-knuckled her way through every humiliation with a smile plastered on her face because good daughters didn't make waves. Good daughters baked elaborate wedding cakes for free. Good daughters let their siblings take credit for their accomplishments. Good daughters stood quietly in yellow dresses while their mothers told photographers to crop them out of every shot. Her thumb pressed down. The phone rang once, twice. "Emily." His voice was exactly what she needed, steady, certain, with that underlying current of absolute attention that made her feel like she was the only person in his universe whenever they spoke. "Alex, her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. You're probably busy. Where are you?" "River Oaks Country Club. My sister's wedding. But I'm outside. I can't go back in there." The words tumbled out in a rush. "They didn't announce me with the family. During cocktail hour, when they did all the introductions, they just skipped right over me like I wasn't even there. And the cake, Alex. I made this beautiful cake, 3 tiers with hand-piped roses. And when people asked who made it, my mother said they hired someone from Buttercup Bakery downtown, and I just stood there like an idiot. Because what was I supposed to say? Actually, that was me. I'm the family disappointment who plays with frosting for a living. I'm on my way." "No, you don't have to." "I'm already in the car, Emily. Stay exactly where you are." The line went dead, and Emily felt something twist in her chest. Relief mixed with shame, mixed with a desperate gratitude that made her feel like she was drowning. She shouldn't need him this much. Shouldn't rely on someone she'd known for only 6 months to be her entire support system. But her family had made it abundantly clear tonight that she had no one else. The door behind her opened, releasing a burst of Sinatra and expensive perfume. "There you are." Her brother Marcus stood silhouetted in the doorway, bow tie loosened, wine glass dangling from his fingers. "Mom's looking for you. Something about cutting the cake." Emily didn't turn around. Tell her to cut it herself, or better yet, tell her to ask the bakery she hired. Marcus laughed, that same condescending chuckle he'd been using on her since they were kids. "Come on, Em. Don't be dramatic. You know how Mom gets at weddings. She's stressed." "She's stressed?" Emily's voice came out flat. "Right. That's why she told the photographer to make sure I wasn't in any of the family portraits. Because she's stressed. You're being sensitive. I'm being erased, Marcus. There's a difference. He sighed, and she could practically feel him rolling his eyes even with her back turned. Look, I don't have time for one of your episodes right now. Melissa's about to throw her bouquet, and Mom wants all the single ladies inside. So unless you want to explain to everyone why you're out here sulking, I'm not sulking. I'm leaving. Leaving? Now his voice sharpened. Emily, don't be ridiculous. It's Melissa's wedding. She finally turned to face him. Does Melissa even know I'm here? Because I haven't seen her once tonight. Not to say hello, not to get a hug, nothing. I spent 3 nights making her cake, Marcus. 3 nights. Do you know what that means? My hands cramped so badly I had to ice them between layers. I used vanilla from Madagascar and imported chocolate, and my own recipe that took me 2 years to perfect. And when I tried to give her a card, just a card with a check inside, because God knows I can't afford the Tiffany crystal she registered for, your wife intercepted it and said I could leave it on the gift table with all the others. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Sarah probably didn't mean... Sarah meant exactly what she said. Just like Mom meant it when she picked this dress. Just like Dad meant it when he walked right past me during cocktail hour without saying a single word. Emily stood up, smoothing down the yellow fabric that made her look jaundiced under the outdoor lights. I'm done, Marcus. I'm done being the family ghost. You're overreacting. Am I? She laughed, and it came out bitter. Quick question. When they did the toast earlier, how did Dad introduce Melissa's family? Marcus's silence was answer enough. He said, our daughter Melissa, Emily continued, voice shaking now. And then he listed you and Sarah and the kids and Mom and Melissa's bridesmaids and even her college roommate. He talked for 5 minutes about all the people who matter in her life. And my name never came up once. So tell me again how I'm overreacting. The door opened again. This time it was Emily's mother, Helen, draped in champagne-colored silk that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent. Her expertly made-up face arranged itself into an expression of strained patience. Emily, darling, people are starting to ask questions. It looks very strange you sitting out here alone. Then tell them the truth, Emily said. Tell them you have another daughter, but she's not important enough to mention. Helen's eyes hardened. Don't start with your martyr routine. Not tonight. This is Melissa's special day, and I will not have you ruining it with your drama. My drama. Emily felt something inside her shift, a foundation that had been crumbling for years finally giving way. I made her cake for free, Mom. 3 tiers, custom design, easily worth $2,000. And you told everyone you hired a bakery. Well, we could hardly tell people my daughter, the failed pastry chef, made it. What would that sound like? The words hung in the air like poison. Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Behind her, she heard gravel crunching, the distinctive sound of an expensive car pulling into the parking lot. Her mother's gaze shifted, eyes narrowing. Who is that? Emily didn't need to turn around to know. She recognized the engine, the deliberate pace of the tires, the way her entire body relaxed just knowing he was here. That's my ride. Your ride? Helen's voice shot up an octave. Emily Dawson, you are not leaving your sister's wedding to run off with some man. Watch me. The car door opened and closed. Footsteps approached, measured, unhurried, the walk of someone who had never doubted his right to exist in any space he entered. Emily finally turned, and there he was. Alexander Kane looked like he'd stepped out of a boardroom and into her disaster of a night without missing a beat. Dark suit, no tie, the kind of presence that made people move out of his way without him having to ask. At 6'3" with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that missed absolutely nothing, he had the air of someone who'd built empires and dismantled enemies before breakfast. He'd also, 6 months ago, walked into her bakery and asked for her opinion on whether almond or vanilla would pair better with lavender, then spent 45 minutes talking to her about flavor profiles like she was an expert instead of a failure. Their eyes met, and Emily watched his jaw tighten as he took in her tear-stained face and wrinkled yellow dress. Emily? His voice was quiet, controlled. Then his gaze shifted to her mother. Mrs. Dawson. Helen pulled herself up to her full height, which was still 8 inches shorter than Alexander. I don't know who you are, but this is a private family event. Alexander Kane. He didn't offer his hand. I'm here for Emily. Recognition flickered across Helen's face. Emily knew that look. Her mother was rapidly calculating the net worth of the man standing in front of her and recalibrating her approach accordingly. The Kane family owned half of Houston's commercial real estate and had their fingers in everything from oil to tech startups. This was exactly the kind of connection Helen spent her life cultivating. Oh. Helen's voice shifted, sweetening like artificial honey. Mr. Kane, what a lovely surprise. I didn't realize you and Emily knew each other. We do. Alexander's hand settled on Emily's lower back, warm and solid through the thin fabric. And we're leaving. Leaving? Helen's smile never wavered, but her eyes went sharp. Surely not before the cake cutting. Emily made the cake, you know. Our little baker. Your little baker, Alexander repeated slowly, has been sitting outside alone, crying, because you erased her from your daughter's wedding. So yes, we're leaving. Now. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus stepped forward, playing mediator like always. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't think there has. Alexander's voice remained perfectly level, perfectly polite, and somehow more dangerous because of it. I think Emily has spent years being treated as less than by people who should protect her, and I think tonight was the last time that happens. Helen's face flushed. How dare you come to my daughter's wedding and… Mom! Everyone turned. Melissa stood in the doorway in her princess-cut wedding gown, looking between them with wide eyes. For a moment, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe her sister would say something, would defend her, would prove that there was still some thread of connection between them. Mom, Melissa repeated, quieter now. People are waiting for the cake. Not, are you okay, Emily? Not, what's going on? Just, people are waiting for the cake. Emily felt the last piece of something inside her break clean off. Cut it yourself, she said. You're good at that, cutting me out. She turned and walked toward Alexander's car, her cheap heels clicking against the concrete. Behind her, she heard her mother's voice rising, Marcus trying to smooth things over, Melissa saying something about not making a scene. Alexander opened the passenger door for her. As she slid into the leather seat, she caught sight of her reflection in the side mirror. Mascara-streaked yellow dress rumpled, eyes red and swollen. She looked exactly like what she was. Broken. Alexander got in the driver's seat and started the engine without a word. They pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the country club and her family and 28 years of trying behind them. They were halfway to the highway before Emily realized she was shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have called. I just… Stop apologizing. But you were probably doing something important and I dragged you out to deal with my mess. Emily… He didn't raise his voice, but something in his tone made her stop mid-sentence. You are not a mess. You are not an inconvenience, and you are sure as hell not something I deal with. The words settled into her chest like stones. Then what am I? He was quiet for a long moment, eyes on the road, jaw tight. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. You're the woman who lights up when she talks about the difference between French and Italian buttercream. You're the person who remembers that I take my coffee black, but judges me for it because it's a waste of good beans. You're someone who deserves a hell of a lot better than a family who treats you like you're invisible. Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks again, but these felt different somehow, less like breaking and more like release. I made her cake, she said quietly. 3 tiers. Champagne cake with raspberry filling and vanilla bean buttercream, decorated with sugar roses that took me 6 hours to pipe. And she didn't even look at me tonight. Not once. I know. How do you know? Because I've watched you kill yourself trying to earn their approval for 6 months now. Every Sunday dinner where you come back exhausted. Every family event where you bake something elaborate and they forget to thank you. Every phone call where your mother calls you her creative one like it's an insult. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I know, because I've watched you shrink yourself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into a space they refuse to make for you. Emily stared out the window at the Houston skyline sliding past, all lit windows and dark sky. When did it start? Alexander asked quietly. When did you realize they didn't love you the way they love your siblings? The question hurt more than it should have. I don't know, Emily admitted. Maybe always? Marcus was the golden child from the beginning, star athlete, straight A's, full ride to Rice. And Melissa was the baby, the princess who could do no wrong. I was just the middle. The creative one. The one who got paint on the furniture and flour in her hair and spent more time in the kitchen than studying for the SATs. And they punished you for it. Not punished exactly, just ignored or redirected. Mom used to tell people I was finding myself when they asked what I did. Like baking wasn't a real career. Like spending 4 years in Paris studying at Le Cordon Bleu was just a phase I'd grow out of. She wiped at her eyes, smearing mascara across her hand. When I came back and opened the bakery, Dad asked me when I was going to get a real job. Marcus told me I was wasting my degree. Melissa asked if I could make her wedding cake for free since I wasn't doing anything important anyway. Alexander's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. And you said yes. Of course I said yes. She's my sister. I thought... Emily's voice cracked. I thought maybe if I made it perfect enough, beautiful enough, they'd finally see me. Really see me. And instead they cropped you out of the photos. The truth of it settled over her like a weight. They pulled up outside her apartment building, a modest walk-up in Montrose that she could barely afford even with the bakery running 6 days a week. Alexander put the car in park but didn't kill the engine. You want to know what I see when I look at you? He asked. Emily shook her head. Don't. I see someone who built a successful business from nothing, someone who studied under Jacques Mercier, one of the best pastry chefs in the world, and came back to Houston to share that gift. Someone who creates art people consume and never quite appreciate the way they should. He turned to face her fully. I see someone who's brilliant and kind and so convinced she's not enough that she lets mediocre people make her feel small. They're my family. They're people who share your DNA. That's not the same thing as family. Emily felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. All her life, she'd operated under the assumption that blood mattered more than anything, that she owed her parents' loyalty simply for existing, that siblings were supposed to matter even when they treated you like hired help. But sitting in Alexander's car with mascara on her face and a ruined dress clinging to her skin, Emily couldn't remember the last time her family had made her feel the way she felt right now, seen, valued, defended. I don't know how to walk away, she admitted. They're all I have. No, Alexander said quietly. They're all you've allowed yourself to have. There's a difference. He was right. She knew he was right, but knowing something and doing something were oceans apart. Come on, Alexander said, killing the engine. Let's get you inside. You don't have to, Emily. He gave her a look. Stop trying to take up less space than you deserve. They walked up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment in silence. Emily fumbled with her keys, hyper-aware of how small and shabby her place must look to someone who probably had a penthouse with a view of the whole city. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, furniture from IKEA and estate sales. But it was hers. Alexander waited while she unlocked the door, then followed her inside. She expected him to make some polite excuse and leave, but instead he shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her second-hand armchair. Sit, he said, pointing to the couch. I'm making you tea. You don't have to. If you say you don't have to one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Where's your kettle? Despite everything, Emily felt a laugh bubble up. Cabinet next to the stove, tea's in the tin next to it. She sank onto the couch and watched him move through her tiny kitchen with surprising ease, finding cups and tea, and even the honey she kept on the top shelf. He moved with the same quiet confidence he brought to everything. No wasted motion, no uncertainty. How do you do that, Elise? She asked. Do what? Just decide something and do it. No second guessing, no worrying about what other people think. Alexander poured hot water over tea bags, the familiar scent of chamomile filling the small space. I spent my 20s trying to please my father, built the company he wanted, dated the women he approved of, lived the life he mapped out for me. Then he died, and I realized I'd wasted a decade becoming someone I didn't recognize. He brought her the tea, their fingers brushing as she took the cup. So I stopped, he continued, settling into the armchair across from her. Stopped performing, stopped pretending, started living according to what I valued instead of what was expected. And the people who actually mattered stuck around. The ones who didn't, they left, and I let them. Just like that? Not just like that. It was messy and hard, and I questioned myself 1,000 times. But yes, eventually, I chose myself over their approval, same way you're going to have to choose. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm cup, letting the heat sink into her palms. What if I choose wrong? There's no wrong choice when you're choosing yourself over people who hurt you. The words settled into her bones. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea, the sounds of the city filtering through her windows, car horns, someone's music playing, the ambient hum of Houston at night. Finally, Alexander set his empty cup aside and stood. I should go. Let you get some rest. Thank you, Emily said quietly, for coming tonight, for everything. He paused at the door, hand on the knob, then turned back to face her. 6 months ago, I walked into a bakery because I'd heard they made the best croissants in Houston. The woman behind the counter looked at me like I was an actual person instead of a net worth, asked me what I was celebrating because nobody buys croissants at 2 in the afternoon unless something good happened, and then spent 20 minutes explaining the chemical process that makes laminated dough flaky. His eyes held hers. That woman was brilliant and passionate and completely unaware of how extraordinary she was. And I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to make her see herself the way I see her. Nishin, Namaikian. Emily's throat tightened. I'm not expecting anything, Alexander continued. I know you're dealing with a lot right now, and the last thing you need is pressure from me. But I need you to understand something. You are not invisible. You are not worthless. And you are sure as hell not someone who deserves to be treated like an afterthought by people who should cherish you. He left before she could find words to respond. Emily sat alone in her quiet apartment, still wearing her yellow dress, and felt the full weight of the evening crash over her. 28 years of trying to be enough, of shrinking herself down, of accepting crumbs and calling it love. And for what? Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Mom's upset. You really embarrassed the family tonight. Then her mother. I expect an apology. Melissa's wedding was ruined because of your tantrum. And finally, Melissa. I can't believe you just left. So selfish. Emily stared at the messages, waiting for the familiar guilt to kick in, the automatic urge to apologize, to smooth things over, to make herself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. But all she felt was tired. Tired of apologizing for existing, tired of earning love that was supposed to be freely given, tired of being the family ghost. She opened a new text to Alexander. Thank you for seeing me. His response came almost immediately. I'll always see you. Get some sleep. Emily set her phone aside, kicked off her terrible yellow shoes, and walked to her bedroom. Tomorrow she'd have to figure out what came next. How to build a life that didn't revolve around earning approval from people who'd already decided she wasn't worth it. But tonight, she let herself fall apart. Because sometimes breaking was the only way to start putting yourself back together. And Emily Dawson was done being broken by people who'd never valued her whole. Emily woke up the next morning with her face stuck to the pillow and her phone vibrating somewhere near her feet. Sunlight cut through the blinds in harsh strips, and for one blissful second she forgot everything that had happened. Then it all came rushing back. The wedding, the yellow dress, her mother's face when Alexander had called her out in front of everyone. The messages afterward, each one a tiny knife designed to make her bleed guilt. Her phone buzzed again. Emily considered throwing it out the window. Instead, she fished it out from under the tangled sheets and squinted at the screen. 17 missed calls. 32 text messages. Most from her mother, a few from Marcus, one from Melissa that just said, "We need to talk." Emily deleted them all without reading the rest. Then she called in sick to her own bakery for the first time in 3 years. Her assistant manager, Jenna, picked up on the second ring, voice already stressed. Please tell me you're on your way. We've got the Morrison order for 11 and I can't find the raspberry coulis anywhere. It's in the walk-in, back left corner, labeled. Emily's voice came out scratchy and raw. Jenna, I need you to run things today. Maybe tomorrow too. I can't. Silence on the other end, then quieter. Are you okay? Not really, but I will be. Take as long as you need. We've got this. Emily hung up and stared at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time she'd just stopped. Not for illness or injury, but just because she needed space to breathe. The bakery had been her entire world for so long. Wake up at 4, prep until 6, bake until 2, clean until 4, collapse into bed, repeat. Sundays were for family dinners where she showed up exhausted, and her mother asked why she looked so tired all the time, like running a business was equivalent to a casual hobby. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Miss Dawson? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Patricia from Occasions magazine. We're doing a feature on Houston's rising culinary talent, and your name came up. Do you have a few minutes to discuss a potential interview? Emily sat up so fast her vision went spotty. I'm sorry, what? We'd like to feature Sweet Haven Bakery in our spring issue. We've heard wonderful things about your work, particularly your European techniques and flavor combinations. Would you be available for an interview next week? We'd also send a photographer to get some shots of you in the bakery. This had to be a joke, or a mistake. People like Emily didn't get featured in magazines. Can I ask who recommended me? Actually, it was Alexander Kane. He's on our advisory board and mentioned your work during our last planning meeting. Said you were one of the best pastry chefs in the city, and we were missing out if we didn't cover you. Of course it was Alexander. Emily found herself smiling despite everything. Yes, I'd love to do the interview. They scheduled it for the following Tuesday, and when Emily hung up, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not quite hope. That felt too fragile. But maybe possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. How are you holding up? Emily typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on magazine called. I know you're behind it. Guilty. You're talented. People should know. Thank you. Stop thanking me for telling the truth. Have you eaten today? Emily glanced at the clock. It was almost noon and her stomach was a tight knot of nothing. Not yet. I'm bringing lunch. Be there in 20. She should have said no. Should have told him she was fine, that he didn't need to keep rescuing her, that she was perfectly capable of feeding herself. But the thought of being alone in her apartment all day, avoiding her family's calls and spiraling in her own head, felt suffocating. Okay. Emily dragged herself to the shower and stood under scalding water until her skin turned pink. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her rattiest bathrobe, with her hair dripping down her back, she found a text from Marcus. Mom wants you to apologize to Melissa. Call her. Emily threw her phone on the bed and went to find actual clothes. She was pulling on jeans when someone knocked. 3 sharp raps that could only be Alexander. Emily opened the door to find him holding 2 paper bags from her favorite Vietnamese place and looking unfairly put together in dark jeans and a white button-down rolled to his elbows. You remembered, she said, eyeing the bags. You told me 3 months ago that their pho is the only thing that fixes bad days. Figured last night qualified. He stepped inside, moving past her to set everything on her tiny kitchen table. Plus spring rolls because you always order them and then pretend you're too full to eat them but finish them anyway when you think I'm not looking. Emily felt heat creep up her neck. I don't. You absolutely do. Alexander started unpacking containers, the smell of beef broth and fresh herbs filling her apartment. Sit. Eat. Bossy. You love it. He wasn't wrong, but Emily wasn't about to admit that out loud. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Emily burning her tongue on soup she couldn't quite taste through the lingering numbness of last night. Alexander watched her with that steady attention he had, the kind that made her feel simultaneously seen and exposed. Your mother called me this morning, he said finally. Emily's spoon clattered against her bowl. What? Twice. Left voicemails both times about how I'd embarrassed her family and damaged my reputation by associating with unstable people. His expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. The second message suggested that if I understood the full situation, meaning your history of dramatic episodes, I'd realize she was just trying to protect everyone involved. Jesus. Emily dropped her head into her hands. I'm so sorry. She had no right. Emily, look at me. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Your mother, Alexander said carefully, is a master manipulator who spent your entire life convincing you that your feelings are inconvenient and your needs are unreasonable. She's now trying to extend that manipulation to me because you did something she couldn't control. You left. And worse, you had someone in your corner who saw through her performance. She's not... Emily stopped. Because wasn't she? Wasn't that exactly what her mother did? Rewrite history, twist situations, make Emily doubt her own reality until she apologized for things that weren't her fault? What did you tell her? Emily asked quietly. I told her that my relationship with you was none of her concern, that her behavior last night was reprehensible, and that if she contacted me again, I'd be speaking to my attorney about harassment. Emily's eyes went wide. You didn't! I absolutely did, and then I blocked her number. Alexander took a deliberate bite of his spring roll. Your entire family, actually. Life's too short to accept calls from people who treat you like garbage. Just like that? Just like that. Emily stared at him. This man who'd walked into her bakery 6 months ago and somehow become the most solid thing in her constantly shifting world. They'd started as customer and baker, him ordering croissants and asking questions about technique, her gradually relaxing enough to actually talk instead of just taking orders. Then he'd started coming in regularly, always at odd hours when the bakery was quiet, and their conversations had stretched from pastries to everything else. Books and travel, and the weird pressure of family expectations, and how hard it was to build something from nothing when everyone around you expected you to fail. She'd never meant to fall for him, hadn't planned on the way her heart kicked up whenever he walked through her door, or how his rare smiles felt like winning something precious. But somewhere between discussing the chemistry of meringue and staying up until midnight texting about nothing important, Emily had tumbled headfirst into feelings she had no idea how to handle. And the terrifying part was that he seemed to feel the same way. Why do you care? The question came out before she could stop it. About me, I mean. You could have anyone. You've got money and power, and you're... She gestured vaguely at all of him. You. And I'm just some baker who can't even get her own family to like her. Alexander set down his food and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. 6 months ago, I walked into your bakery because my assistant mentioned you made good coffee. I was between meetings, exhausted, running on 3 hours of sleep because I'd spent the night negotiating a deal in Singapore. And you took one look at me and said, "You look like you need something stronger than coffee. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Emily remembered that day. Remembered this intense, beautiful man in an expensive suit looking completely wrung out, and how her mouth had moved faster than her brain. I made you sit down, she said slowly. Brought you soup and bread from the back because you looked like you were about to pass out. You did, and then you told me that money couldn't buy health, and if I kept running myself into the ground, I'd end up dead before 50, just like every other workaholic with more ambition than sense. Alexander's mouth quirked. No one had talked to me like that in years, like I was a person instead of a position. So I came back the next day, and the day after that, because being around you felt like being around someone real. I'm a mess, Emily whispered. You're human. There's a difference. He reached out, thumb brushing over her knuckles. You want to know why I care? Because you're the first person in a decade who made me feel like I could just exist without performing. Because you laugh at my terrible jokes and call me out when I'm being ridiculous, and you look at me like I'm not a bank account with a pulse. His hand tightened around hers. Because you're brilliant and kind, and you see the best in everyone except yourself. Emily felt tears burning behind her eyes again. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let someone actually care about me. Everyone who's supposed to love me treats me like I'm disposable. What if that's just what I deserve? Emily, no, I mean it. What if they're right? What if I'm too sensitive, too dramatic, too much trouble? My ex-husband said the same things my mother does. That I overreact. That I make everything about me. That I'm exhausting to deal with. Her voice cracked. What if that's just who I am? Alexander's jaw clenched. Did your ex-husband tell you this before or after he cheated on you with his coworker? Emily flinched. I'm not trying to hurt you, Alexander said, softer now. But you're doing that thing where you blame yourself for other people's cruelty. Daniel was a weak man who married you because you were talented and beautiful and made him feel important, then resented you for those same qualities when they threatened his ego. Your family is so invested in their own image that they can't handle you being successful outside of the role they assigned you. And both of those things say everything about them and nothing about you. Bati, you make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's clear. There's a difference. He squeezed her hand once, then let go. But you have to decide if you believe me or them, because you can't keep one foot in both worlds. Either you're the problem, dramatic, exhausting, too sensitive, or they are. And only one of those options leads to you actually living instead of just surviving. Emily pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small on her own couch out of habit. Alexander noticed. He always noticed, and something pained crossed his face. I'm scared, she admitted. If I cut them off, if I really walk away, I'll have no one. You'll have yourself, and me, if you want me. And Jenna, who called me last month to make sure I knew you weren't eating enough during wedding season, and half your regular customers who ask about you like your family. He paused. You're not alone, Emily. You've just been convinced that the only people who count are the ones who hurt you most. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, another call from her mother. Emily stared at it until it went to voicemail. I don't know if I'm strong enough, she whispered. Then be weak with me until you are. They sat in her small apartment while the afternoon light shifted across the walls, and Emily felt something in her chest start to unknot. Not fixed. She wasn't naive enough to think one conversation could undo 28 years of damage. But maybe. Loosened. Enough to breathe a little deeper. Tell me about Paris, Alexander said suddenly. Emily blinked. What? You studied there for 4 years. You've mentioned it exactly 3 times in 6 months. Always in passing, like it doesn't matter. But you trained under Jacques Mercier, who doesn't take just anyone. So tell me about Paris. A small smile tugged at Emily's mouth despite everything. You really want to know? I wouldn't ask if I didn't, so Emily told him. About the tiny apartment in the 11th arrondissement that she'd shared with 2 other students, where they'd argued about technique and stolen each other's ingredients and stayed up until dawn perfecting croissants. About Mercier, who was terrifying and brilliant and had once thrown an entire tray of macarons in the trash because they were 3 millimeters too large. About walking along the Seine at sunset after 16-hour days, eating cheap crepes from street vendors and feeling more alive than she'd ever felt in Houston. Why did you come back? Alexander asked. My dad had a heart attack. Mom called, said the family needed me, that it was selfish to be across the world when he was sick. Emily's smile faded. So I came home, stayed home, and by the time he recovered, I'd already signed the lease on the bakery space, and it felt too late to go back. Do you regret it? I regret believing it was an emergency. He was fine, minor blockage, resolved with medication. But Mom made it sound like he was dying, and I panicked, gave up the last year of my program, left my friends, walked away from opportunities. She shook her head. When I got home, the first thing Dad said was that he didn't ask me to come back, that I should have finished my training. And Mom said I was being dramatic about some school in France when my family needed me. So they manipulated you into giving up your dream, then blamed you for doing it. Yeah. Emily laughed, but it came out bitter. Pretty much. And you opened this bakery anyway. I had to do something with the training, and I thought, stupidly, that if I built something successful here, something they could see and touch and brag about to their friends, maybe they'd finally be proud of me. Are they? Emily thought about her mother telling people she'd hired a bakery for Melissa's cake, about her father asking when she'd get a real job, about Marcus calling her business a little hobby shop at Thanksgiving dinner last year. No, she said quietly. They're embarrassed by me, always have been. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, then, What would you do if you could do anything? If money wasn't a factor and no one's opinion mattered but yours? That's not realistic. I didn't ask if it was realistic. I asked what you'd do. Emily closed her eyes and let herself imagine it. Really imagine it, without the weight of expectations or the fear of judgment. I'd go back to Paris, she said slowly, or maybe somewhere new, Copenhagen, Tokyo, Sao Paulo. Study under different chefs, learn different techniques, push myself in ways I can't hear. And then I'd come back and open something different, not just a bakery, but a whole experience. Pastries, yes, but also classes, a space where people could learn instead of just consume. Her eyes opened. But that's a fantasy. I can barely keep Sweet Haven afloat as it is. Why barely? Because I charge too little and give away too much free labor to family who never pays me back. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Last year alone, I made cakes for Marcus's twins' birthday, my cousin's baby shower, Melissa's engagement party, my aunt's retirement, and probably 5 other things I'm forgetting. All free, because family doesn't charge family. Except the bakery still needs supplies and rent and utilities, so I work 7 days a week to make up the difference. Well, Alexander's expression went very still. How much would you estimate those projects cost in materials and labor? Emily did rough math in her head and felt sick. Maybe $12,000? 15? And how much did your family contribute to your business when you were starting out? Nothing. Mom said it was important I do it myself so I'd learn responsibility. She paused, although she had no problem giving Marcus $50,000 to invest in his friend's tech startup. And they paid for Melissa's wedding, obviously. Obviously, Alexander echoed, voice flat. Emily felt defensive on their behalf, which was absurd given everything. They're not bad people. They just what? Drain you financially while devaluing your work? Demand your labor while offering nothing in return? Make you feel small so they can feel big? Alexander stood, pacing her small living room with barely contained energy. Emily, I've seen financial abuse in enough forms to recognize it. What they're doing to you isn't love, it's exploitation. The word landed like a slap. That's not, they wouldn't they? He turned to face her. Let me ask you something. When's the last time one of your siblings asked how you were doing? Not as a preface to asking for something, but genuinely checking in on your well-being? Emily opened her mouth, closed it, reached back through months of conversations, dinner table exchanges, brief texts. She came up empty. When's the last time your mother thanked you for anything? Silence. When's the last time your father told you he was proud of you? Emily felt something crack open in her chest. Stop. I'm not trying to hurt you. Well, you are. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself. You're taking everything I already know and saying it out loud, and it's making it real. And I can't. Alexander crossed to her in 3 strides and pulled her against his chest. Emily resisted for half a second, then crumpled, pressing her face into his shirt while everything she'd been holding back came spilling out in gasping, ugly sobs. He didn't tell her to stop crying, didn't offer empty platitudes or try to fix it, just held her while she fell apart, one hand steady between her shoulder blades, the other cradling the back of her head like she was something precious. I hate them, Emily choked out. I hate that I still want them to love me. I hate that part of me still thinks if I just try harder, do better, shrink smaller. I know. It's pathetic. It's human. Alexander's voice rumbled through his chest into hers. You can't logic your way out of wanting your family to love you. That's not how it works. Then how does it work? You grieve, you feel it, you let yourself be angry and sad and everything in between. And eventually, the wanting gets smaller, quieter. It doesn't disappear completely, but it stops running your life. Emily pulled back enough to look at him, vision blurred with tears. Is that what happened with your father? Something shuddered in Alexander's expression. They didn't talk about his father much. Emily knew he'd been controlling, demanding, impossible to please. That Alexander had spent years trying to be the son his father wanted before finally giving up. Yes, he said quietly. Took me 5 years after he died to stop imagining conversations where he finally said he was proud of me. And another 3 to realize those conversations were never going to happen, even in my head, because he fundamentally wasn't capable of giving me what I needed. That's depressing. It's freeing. Once I accepted that nothing I did would ever be enough for him, I stopped trying to be enough. Started living for myself instead. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away tears. Best decision I ever made. Emily leaned into his touch without thinking. I don't know how to be that brave. You're already braver than you think. You called me last night instead of suffering alone. You deleted their messages this morning instead of reading them and spiraling. You're doing it, Emily. One choice at a time. Malsiti I 18.18. Her phone rang again. This time it was Melissa. Emily stared at it, feeling the automatic pull to answer, to smooth things over, to apologize for existing wrong. Then she declined the call and turned off her phone completely. There, she said, voice shaking. How's that for brave? Alexander smiled, a real one, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. It's a start. They spent the rest of the afternoon in her apartment, not doing anything important. Alexander helped her clean up from lunch while she told him about the magazine interview. They argued about whether butter or oil made better cakes. Alexander was wrong, but she let him think he had a point. And when the sun started setting and he finally said he should go, Emily felt the absence of his presence before he'd even left. Thank you, Che, she said at the door. For lunch? For listening? For not running away screaming when my family showed their whole ass last night. Emily, he said her name like it meant something. I'm not going anywhere, no matter how messy this gets. You say that now. I say that because I mean it. He ducked his head, caught her gaze, and held it. I've spent 6 months getting to know you, the real you, not the version you perform for people who don't appreciate it. And that person? She's worth fighting for, even if she doesn't believe it yet. He kissed her forehead, brief, gentle, leaving her skin tingling, and then he was gone. Emily locked the door behind him and leaned against it, heart pounding, mind racing. She turned her phone back on to find 23 new messages and 11 missed calls, and instead of the usual spike of anxiety, all she felt was tired. Tired of performing, tired of shrinking, tired of letting people who didn't value her dictate how she felt about herself. So Emily did something she'd never done before. She opened a new message to her family group chat and typed, I need space. Don't contact me for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she hit send. The responses started immediately. Her mother demanding to know what this was about. Marcus calling her dramatic. Melissa saying she was being selfish and cruel. Emily muted the chat and put her phone face down on the counter. Then she went to bed at 7:30, pulled the covers over her head, and slept for 14 hours straight. When she woke up the next morning, the world hadn't ended. The sun still rose. Houston still buzzed outside her window. And Emily Dawson, for the first time in her life, felt like maybe, just maybe, she could figure out how to exist without apologizing for it. It wasn't much, but it was something. Emily returned to this bakery 3 days later feeling like she'd been hit by a truck and somehow survived. Jenna took one look at her face and immediately put on a fresh pot of coffee without asking questions, which was exactly why Emily had hired her 2 years ago. The girl had instincts. Morrison order went perfect, Jenna said, sliding a mug across the counter. The raspberry coulis was exactly where you said. And we got 2 new custom orders, one for a 50th anniversary party, another for some corporate event downtown. Good, that's good. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, breathing in the familiar scent of her own space. Flour and sugar and the faint lingering sweetness of yesterday's vanilla. This place was hers in a way nothing else had ever been, built from her own hands, her own vision, her own stubborn refusal to give up even when everyone told her to be realistic. You okay, boss? Jenna leaned against the display case, concern evident in her dark eyes. Getting there. Emily took a long drink, scalding her tongue. Did anyone call looking for me? Your mom. Twice. I told her you were unavailable. Jenna hesitated. She wasn't happy about it. She never is. Emily set down her mug. Thanks for covering. I know it was last minute. You've never called in sick before. I figured something major happened. Jenna paused. Your sister's wedding? Emily had mentioned it in passing weeks ago, mostly complaining about the cake order she'd foolishly agreed to make. She nodded. Want to talk about it? Not even a little bit. Fair enough. Well, we've got prep for the anniversary cake, and I already started the corporate order, 3 dozen assorted pastries, delivery Saturday. Oh, and some guy came by yesterday asking about private lessons. Emily blinked. Lessons? Yeah, said he wanted to learn proper French technique. Left his card. Jenna fished a business card from the register and handed it over. Seemed legit. Offered to pay whatever your hourly rate is. Emily studied the card. Simple, elegant, expensive cardstock. David Chen, followed by a phone number and email. No company name, no title. She tucked it into her apron pocket and got to work, letting the familiar rhythm of measuring and mixing push everything else to the edges of her mind. By noon, she'd prepped 4 cake layers, made 2 batches of buttercream, and was elbow deep in chocolate ganache when the bell over the door chimed. She didn't need to look up to know it was Alexander. She felt his presence like a shift in air pressure. You're back, he said. Couldn't hide forever. Emily glanced over her shoulder and found him standing just inside the doorway, looking unfairly good in dark slacks and a gray sweater. Don't you have a company to run? I'm delegating. It's a revolutionary concept. He crossed to the counter, eyes scanning her face like he was checking for damage. How are you really? Honestly, I have no idea. Emily turned back to her ganache, stirring with more force than necessary. I keep waiting to feel something dramatic, relief or grief or anger, but mostly I just feel blank, like I used up all my emotions and now there's nothing left. That's normal. You're in shock. Is there a timeline for when I stop feeling like I'm watching my life happen to someone else? Couple weeks, maybe longer. Depends on how much you let yourself process instead of pushing it down. He leaned against the counter, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and woodsy that made her want to lean in. Have they tried contacting you? According to Jenna, my mother called here twice, plus the 73 messages I've been ignoring on my phone. Emily poured the ganache into a bowl to cool. Marcus showed up at my apartment last night. Alexander straightened. What happened? I didn't answer. He knocked for maybe 10 minutes, then slid a note under my door about how I was tearing the family apart and Mom was having chest pains from the stress. She wiped her hands on her apron. I threw it away without reading the whole thing. Good. It doesn't feel good. It feels like I'm being cruel. You're setting boundaries. They feel the same to people who've never respected them before. Alexander reached across the counter, caught her hand in his. But you're doing it anyway. That takes strength. Emily wanted to believe him. Wanted to feel strong instead of just tired and guilty and vaguely nauseous every time she thought about her phone sitting at home with all those unread messages stacking up like accusations. The bell chimed again. This time it was a customer, middle-aged woman in yoga pants looking for a birthday cake consultation. Emily pulled her hand back from Alexander's and slipped into professional mode, discussing flavors and designs and delivery dates with the practiced ease of 3 years in business. When the woman left with a deposit paid and consultation scheduled, Alexander was still there, watching her with that intensity that made her feel transparent. What? Emily asked. You're good at this. The customer thing. Making people feel heard. It's my job. It's more than that. You make people feel important, like their birthday cake actually matters. He tilted his head. You do that with everyone, except yourself. Emily busied herself cleaning already clean counters. Are you here for a reason or just to psychoanalyze me? Both. Alexander pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the counter. Open it. If this is money, it's not money, just open it. Emily wiped her hands and carefully tore the envelope. Inside was a plane ticket. Houston to Paris, departing in 2 weeks, returning open-ended. Her heart stopped. What is this? You said if you could do anything, you'd go back to Paris. Study under different chefs. Push yourself. Alexander's voice was carefully neutral. So go. I can't just... Alexander, this is insane. I have a bakery, responsibilities. I can't abandon everything. You're not abandoning anything. Jenna's more than capable of managing the day-to-day operations. I've already spoken to her. Emily's head snapped up. You what? She came to me yesterday, said you'd been running yourself into the ground for years, and if anyone deserved a break, it was you. Asked if there was anything I could do to help. He shrugged. So I helped. By buying me a plane ticket without asking? By giving you an option. You don't have to take it, but it's there if you want it. Emily stared at the ticket, feeling something huge and terrifying unfurling in her chest. Paris. The city she'd left behind because her family needed her, except they hadn't really needed her at all. They just wanted her close enough to use. I can't afford this, she said weakly. It's not a loan, it's a gift. Alexander. Before you argue, let me explain something. He came around the counter, backing her against the workspace until they were inches apart. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Money I inherited from a father who used it to control people. And I've spent the last decade trying to figure out what to do with it that actually matters. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You matter, he said quietly. Your talent matters. Your dreams matter. And if I can use resources I didn't earn to help someone I care about pursue something they're brilliant at, that's not charity. That's investment. Investment in what? In you. In the person you could become if you stopped letting people make you small. His eyes held hers. Go to Paris. Study. Learn. Figure out who Emily Dawson is when she's not trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. And then come back and build something extraordinary. Emily felt tears burning. What if I fail? Then you fail. And you learn from it and try again, but at least you'll have tried. His other hand found her waist, steadying her. You've spent your whole life playing it safe because taking risks meant disappointing people. But those people are already disappointed in you for existing. So what exactly do you have to lose? Everything. Nothing. Emily didn't know anymore. I need to think about it, she whispered. Fair enough? Alexander stepped back, giving her space to breathe. But think fast. Tickets for 2 weeks from today. He left before she could formulate a response, the bell chiming in his wake. Emily stood alone in her bakery, holding a plane ticket to a life she'd given up on, and felt the careful walls she'd built around her heart start to crack. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Customers came and went. Emily baked and decorated and smiled and made small talk while her mind spun in circles. Paris. She could actually go back to Paris, see her old haunts, reconnect with classmates who'd actually become successful chefs, maybe even reach out to Mercier's school and see if they'd let her audit some classes. Or she could stay in Houston, keep her head down, rebuild the fragile peace she'd barely started to establish. By closing time, Emily's hands were shaking. Jenna found her sitting on the floor of the walk-in cooler at 6:30, knees pulled to her chest, surrounded by ingredients and completely still. Okay, that's it. Jenna hauled Emily to her feet with surprising strength for someone 5'2". We're going to Melina's. You're going to eat something that isn't frosting, and you're going to tell me what the hell is going on. I'm fine. You're sitting in a cooler. That's not fine. That's concerning. Come on. 20 minutes later, Emily found herself in a booth at her favorite Tex-Mex place with a margarita she didn't order and a plate of enchiladas she wasn't sure she could eat. Jenna sat across from her, arms crossed, waiting. Alexander bought me a plane ticket to Paris, Emily said finally. Jenna's eyebrows shot up. Damn, that's romantic. That's insane. It's complicated. You're in love with him. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You light up every time he walks in, and he looks at you like you're the only person in the room. Jenna took a sip of her own margarita. So what's the problem? The problem is my entire life just imploded. My family hates me, I'm barely holding it together, and now he wants me to abandon my bakery and run away to France like some kind of romantic fantasy that doesn't work in real life. First of all, your family doesn't hate you. They're mad because you finally stood up to them. Jenna pointed a chip at her for emphasis. Second, the bakery will survive. I've been doing most of the actual management for 6 months anyway, while you exhausted yourself making free cakes for people who didn't appreciate them. And third, why does this feel like running away instead of running toward something? Emily opened her mouth, closed it. She didn't have an answer. You've wanted this for years, Jenna continued. Every time you talk about Paris, your whole face changes. You get this look like you're remembering what it felt like to breathe properly. And now someone's offering you a chance to have that again, and you're looking for reasons to say no. Because people don't just get second chances. That's not how life works. Says who? Your family? Jenna leaned forward. Emily, you're 28. You're talented as hell. You've got someone who clearly cares about you trying to support your dreams. The only thing stopping you is you. Emily took a long drink of her margarita, feeling the burn all the way down. What if I go and I realize I'm not as good as I thought I was? What if I've been telling myself I gave up something special, but really I was just average and Paris was going to chew me up anyway? Then at least you'll know. And you can come back and build something else. Jenna grabbed Emily's hand across the table. But I've tasted your work. I've watched you create things that make people cry happy tears. You're not average. You're exceptional. And the only reason you don't see it is because your family spent 28 years convincing you that exceptional wasn't enough. Emily felt something shift in her chest, a loosening, like a knot finally giving way. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. Means it matters. Jenna squeezed her hand once, then let go. Now eat your enchiladas before they get cold, and then we're going to make a plan. They stayed at Melina's until almost 9, sketching out logistics on napkins. Jenna could handle the bakery, maybe even hire another part-time person to help with the increased orders. Emily could set up remote access to the books, stay available for consultations on custom orders, check in weekly. It wasn't abandonment, it was delegation. By the time Emily got home, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Possibility. Her apartment was dark and quiet. She flipped on lights, dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, and froze. Someone was sitting on her couch. Her mother stood up, perfectly composed in a cream pantsuit, and Emily's brief flash of possibility evaporated into dread. How did you get in here? I still have the spare key from when you had the flu last year. Helen's voice was calm, measured, the tone she used when she was about to deliver a lecture disguised as concern. We need to talk. I asked for space. And you've had 3 days. That's more than enough time for you to calm down and think rationally. Helen smoothed her jacket. Sit down, Emily. This is my apartment. I don't take orders here. Something flashed across Helen's face. Surprise, maybe, that Emily was pushing back. But she recovered quickly, rearranging her features into practiced concern. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I'm worried about you. We all are. You've been acting erratically, leaving Melissa's wedding, refusing to answer calls, sending that dramatic message to the family chat. Helen took a step closer. And now I hear you're planning to run off to Paris with some man you barely know? Emily's blood went cold. How do you... Jenna mentioned it when I called the bakery. She seemed to think it was a good idea, but that girl has always been easily influenced. Helen's eyes sharpened. Is that what this is about? This Alexander person? Did he convince you that your family doesn't love you so he could isolate you? Get out. Emily, you broke into my apartment, you interrogated my employee, and now you're standing in my living room telling me that the first person who's treated me with actual respect in years is trying to isolate me? Emily's voice rose. Get out. I will not be spoken to this way. Then leave. Emily grabbed her mother's purse from the couch and shoved it at her. You don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to make me feel crazy for having feelings or selfish for having boundaries. I asked for space and you couldn't even give me 3 days before breaking into my home. Helen's composure finally cracked. I gave you everything. A good home, education, opportunities. And this is how you repay me? By throwing a tantrum because you didn't get enough attention at your sister's wedding? You told the photographer to crop me out of the family photos. I did no such thing. I heard you, Mom. I was standing right there when you told him to make sure all the important family members were centered in the frame, and then you listed everyone except me. Emily felt tears coming, but refused to let them fall. You erased me from my own sister's wedding and then told everyone I made the cake that I spent 3 nights creating for free. You're being dramatic. Stop calling me dramatic. Emily's hands clenched into fists. I have spent my entire life trying to be good enough for you, quiet enough, small enough, useful enough. And it was never enough because you don't actually want a daughter. You want an accessory that performs on command and disappears when inconvenient. Helen's face went hard. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family. And you have no idea what I've sacrificed trying to be part of it. Emily walked to the door and opened it. I need you to leave, now, and I need you to give me back my spare key. Emily, key, now. Helen dug in her purse with shaking hands and produced the key, dropping it into Emily's palm like it burned. At the door, she paused. If you go to Paris, don't expect us to be here when you come back. Family is about loyalty, and you're making your choice very clear. You're right, Emily said quietly. I am making a choice. I'm choosing myself over people who've never chosen me. And if that means I lose you, I've already lost something I never really had. Helen's face went white. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out without another word. Emily locked the door behind her and pressed her forehead against the cool wood, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. She'd done it, actually stood up to her mother, actually held her ground, actually chosen herself for maybe the first time in her life. It felt horrible. It felt like freedom. She slid down to the floor and sat there for a long time, back against the door, breathing through the adrenaline crash. When she finally stood up, her legs were numb and her phone was ringing. Alexander's name lit up the screen. Hey, she answered, voice rough. Are you all right? I just got a very angry voicemail from your mother about how I'm corrupting her daughter and she's considering legal action. She broke into my apartment. Silence on the other end. Then, very carefully, she what? Emily told him everything, the spare key, the interrogation, the ultimatum at the door. By the time she finished, Alexander's breathing had gone sharp and controlled in that way that meant he was furious but containing it. I'm coming over. You don't have to. Emily, I'm already in the car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And tomorrow morning, we're changing your locks and discussing a restraining order. That's extreme. Breaking into someone's home is extreme. This is proportional. His voice softened slightly. Are you safe right now? Yeah, she's gone. I got the key back. Good. Lock the deadbolt. I'm on my way. He hung up before she could argue. Emily did as he said, locking both locks, then went to her bedroom and pulled out a suitcase she hadn't touched in 5 years. She set it on her bed and stared at it for a long moment. Paris. She could actually do this. Could get on a plane and leave Houston and her family and all the weight she'd been carrying behind. Could spend weeks or months figuring out who she was when she wasn't performing for people who'd already decided she wasn't worth their time. Could come back different, stronger, sure of herself in a way she'd never been allowed to be. Emily pulled out her phone and opened the family group chat she'd muted days ago. 79 unread messages, pleading, anger, guilt-tripping, threats. She scrolled through them without reading, then typed a single message. I'm going to Paris. Don't contact me. I'll reach out when and if I'm ready. Take care of yourselves. Then she left the group chat entirely. The knock on her door came exactly 10 minutes later. Emily checked the peephole, Alexander looking rumpled and concerned, before unlocking it. He took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. Emily went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and breathing him in. He smelled like safety, like someone who saw all her broken pieces and decided she was worth the effort anyway. I told her to leave, Emily mumbled into his shirt. And I told my family I'm going to Paris. And I think I might be having a panic attack. You're not having a panic attack. You're having a breakthrough. There's a difference. Alexander's hand rubbed slow circles on her back. I'm proud of you. For what? Having a meltdown in my own apartment? For standing up for yourself. For choosing what you want instead of what they expect. He pulled back enough to see her face. That took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes that's the same thing. He guided her to the couch, sat down and pulled her next to him. Talk to me. What do you need right now? Emily thought about it, really thought about it, instead of defaulting to what she thought she should say. I need to stop being scared, she said finally. I need to stop waiting for permission to live my own life, and I need to go to Paris before I lose my nerve. Alexander smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his whole face. Then let's make it happen. They spent the next hour making actual plans. Alexander had contacts in Paris, a friend who owned a small hotel in the 6th arrondissement, who could arrange a long-term rental, another who ran a culinary consulting firm and might know which chefs were taking students. Emily made lists on her phone, feeling the careful structure of her life reshaping itself into something she actually wanted. "What about the bakery?" she asked. "What about it? I can't just abandon it for months." "You're not abandoning it. You're trusting Jenna to run it while you pursue professional development that will ultimately make you better at your craft." Alexander tilted his head. "Unless you don't trust Jenna. I trust her completely. She's more organized than I am." "Then let her prove it. Pay her properly. Give her a raise for the additional responsibility, and let yourself take the break you should have taken years ago." It sounded so simple when he said it like that. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "Why are you doing all this for me?" "Because I can. Because you deserve it. Because watching you finally choose yourself is the most beautiful thing I've seen in years." His arm came around her shoulders. "And because I'm selfish enough to want you to come back different, confident, sure of yourself, ready to build the life you actually want instead of the one you settled for." "What if I come back and I'm not who you think I am?" "Then I'll get to know who you actually are, and I have a feeling I'll like her just as much." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Stop looking for reasons this won't work and start believing it might." Emily closed her eyes and let herself imagine it. Really imagine it, without the weight of guilt or fear or all the voices telling her she was being selfish. Paris in the spring. Croissants from her favorite boulangerie on Rue des Martyrs. Long walks along the Seine. Studying under chefs who'd push her harder than she'd ever been pushed. Coming back to Houston with new skills, new confidence, new certainty that she was exactly enough. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll go." She lifted her head to look at him. "I'll go to Paris. For real." Alexander's eyes lit up. "Yeah?" "Yeah. I'm terrified and I have no idea what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm going." He kissed her then, soft and sure and tasting like possibility. Emily melted into it, feeling something in her chest finally unfurl. This was what it felt like to be chosen, to be valued, to be seen as worthy of investment instead of just useful enough to keep around. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. 2 weeks, he said, and then you're on a plane to your future. Emily smiled despite everything. No pressure or anything? Absolutely none, except the pressure of living up to your own potential, but I have a feeling you're ready for that. He stayed until almost midnight, helping her make lists and research programs and generally keeping her from spiraling into panic. When he finally left, Emily walked him to the door and held on a little longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." That's what people do when they love someone. He said it casually, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and Emily's heart stopped. "Alexander, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." He kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we change your locks and start getting you ready for Paris." Then he was gone, and Emily was alone with those 3 words echoing in her head. Love. He loved her. This man who could have anyone had looked at her, messy, broken, still figuring herself out, Emily Dawson, and decided she was worth loving. Emily locked the door, walked to her bedroom, and looked at the suitcase still sitting on her bed. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, she'd be on a plane to Paris with a man who loved her, supporting her dreams, and a family who'd finally shown their true colors behind her. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like the first deep breath she'd taken in years. The locksmith arrived at 8 in the morning, which meant Emily had been awake for 4 hours already, alternating between packing her suitcase and staring at it like it might explode. Alexander showed up 10 minutes later with coffee and breakfast tacos, took one look at her face, and steered her to the couch. "You didn't sleep," he said. "I slept some. Maybe 2 hours." Emily accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping both hands around the cup. "I kept thinking about everything that could go wrong. What if I get there and realize I'm rusty? What if Mercier's circle doesn't want anything to do with me after I left? What if you're brilliant and everyone recognizes it?" Alexander sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. "You're catastrophizing." "I'm being realistic." "You're being terrified, which is different." He nudged her shoulder with his. "But you're going anyway. That's what matters." The locksmith worked efficiently, replacing both locks and the deadbolt. Emily watched him work and felt something settle in her chest. Her mother couldn't just walk in anymore. Nobody could. This space was truly hers now, protected and private. When the locksmith left, Alexander handed her the new keys. "One for you, one spare. And before you offer it to anyone, remember what happened with the last spare." Emily pocketed both keys. "I'm not giving these to anyone." "Good." They spent the morning sorting through logistics. Emily called Jenna and officially asked her to manage the bakery for the next few months, offering a significant raise that made Jenna actually squeal on the phone. Then she called her landlord to arrange automatic rent payments. Then she went through her apartment room by room, making lists of what needed to be handled while she was gone. Around noon, her phone rang with an unknown number. Emily almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Emily Dawson?" A man's voice, professional and unfamiliar. "Yes?" "This is Robert Chen. My son David left his card at your bakery about private lessons." Emily remembered the business card Jenna had given her. "Right, yes, I'm sorry. I've been meaning to call back." "No worries, I know you're busy. Listen, I'm actually calling about something bigger. I run a culinary program for underprivileged kids in Third Ward, teaching basic cooking skills, nutrition, that kind of thing. We've been looking for someone to come in and do a pastry workshop. David mentioned your background, training in Paris and all that, and I thought you might be interested." Emily's first instinct was to say no. She was leaving in less than 2 weeks. She had too much to do. She couldn't possibly fit in another commitment. But something made her pause. "What kind of workshop?" "Just a few hours. Show them some basic techniques. Let them make something they can take home to their families. Most of these kids have never had access to formal culinary education. Figured it might open some doors, you know." Emily thought about herself at 15, already in love with baking, but convinced it wasn't a real career. What would it have meant to have someone show up and tell her it was possible? That you could build a life from flour and sugar and creativity? "When?" she asked. "Flexible, whenever works for you." "I'm leaving for Paris in 2 weeks, but I could do something before then. Maybe this weekend? That would be perfect. Saturday afternoon work?" Emily agreed before she could overthink it, scribbling down details while Alexander watched with a small smile. "What?" she asked after hanging up. "Nothing. Just nice to see you saying yes to things that aren't obligations. It's a workshop for kids. That's definitely an obligation. It's a choice. You could have said no." Alexander stood, stretching. "Come on. We're going shopping." "For what?" "Paris. You need clothes that aren't flour-covered aprons and yoga pants." Emily looked down at her current outfit, leggings and an oversized sweatshirt that said, "Whisks take flight," with a cartoon whisk. "What's wrong with my clothes?" "Absolutely nothing for Houston, but you're going to one of the fashion capitals of the world, and I refuse to let you show up looking like you don't know your own worth." He held out his hand. "Trust me." Shopping with Alexander was an experience Emily hadn't expected. He steered her away from her usual stores, Target and Old Navy, places where nothing cost more than $50, and into boutiques in River Oaks that didn't have prices on the tags, which Emily knew meant she couldn't afford anything inside. "Alexander, this is ridiculous. I can't." "Yes, you can. Consider it part of the Paris gift." He was already pulling dresses off racks, holding them up to her and making thoughtful noises. "You need at least 3 good dresses, some nice jeans, a proper coat because Paris in spring is colder than you remember." "I remember fine." "And shoes that aren't sneakers or those terrible clogs you wear in the bakery." Emily tried on what felt like 100 outfits. Alexander sat outside the dressing room offering opinions with surprising accuracy. Yes to the navy wrap dress. No to the one with the weird ruffles. Definitely yes to the leather jacket that made her feel like someone who had their life together. "This is too much," Emily said, emerging in dark jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "This is exactly right." Alexander stood, circling her slowly. "You look like yourself, just the version who believes she deserves nice things." Emily caught her reflection in the mirror. He was right. She looked put together in a way she never did, like someone who belonged in rooms where important things happened. "I don't know how to be that person," she admitted quietly. "Then practice. Start acting like her until it feels natural." Alexander caught her eye in the mirror. "Fake it until you make it" isn't just a saying. Sometimes you have to try on a new version of yourself before it fits. They left with 6 bags of clothes Emily would never have bought for herself, and a credit card bill that made her nauseous when Alexander refused to let her see it. In the car, Emily turned to him. "I'm going to pay you back for all of this. The ticket, the clothes, everything. You don't need to." "I do. Not because I don't appreciate it, but because I need to know I can. That I'm not just trading one kind of dependence for another." She met his gaze. "I need to do this on my own terms, even if it takes me years to pay you back." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, but interest-free, and you start paying after you're settled. Deal?" "Deal." That evening, Emily went to the Third Ward Community Center to scout the kitchen for Saturday's workshop. It was smaller than she expected. Industrial stoves that had seen better days, mismatched mixing bowls, enough space for maybe 15 kids to work comfortably. Robert Chen met her there, a stocky man in his 50s with laugh lines around his eyes and flour perpetually dusted on his glasses. "Thanks for doing this," he said, shaking her hand. "These kids don't get a lot of chances like this. Most of them are convinced their only options are fast food or gangs. Showing them there's another path, that matters." Emily felt something tighten in her chest. "I'm happy to help." "What age range?" 13 to 17, mix of skill levels. Some have been coming for months, others are brand new. He showed her around the space, pointing out where supplies were kept. "I figured you could do something simple but impressive, something they can take home and feel proud of." Emily thought about it. Macarons were too technical, croissants took too long. But chocolate chip cookies, classic, approachable, with enough room for creativity that kids could make them their own, those could work. "Cookies," she said, "but we'll do it properly. Discuss the science, why butter temperature matters, how sugar ratios affect texture. Make them understand it's not just following a recipe, it's chemistry and art combined." Robert's face lit up. "Perfect. See you Saturday at 2?" Emily agreed and drove home feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks, purpose that wasn't tied to proving herself to people who'd already decided she wasn't enough. The next few days blurred together. Emily trained Jenna on the more complicated custom orders, updated all the bakery systems, and had 3 separate panic attacks about leaving her business in someone else's hands. Alexander talked her down from each one with patience that should have been annoying, but somehow wasn't. Friday afternoon, Marcus showed up at the bakery. Emily was in the back doing inventory when Jenna came to get her, expression apologetic. "Your brother's here. I told him you were busy, but he's insisting." Emily took a deep breath, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked out front. Marcus stood by the display case in his usual business casual, looking uncomfortable and out of place among the pastries. When he saw Emily, something complicated crossed his face. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom told me you're going to Paris. News travels fast." "She's upset. So is Melissa. Dad won't talk about it, which means he's really upset." Marcus shifted his weight. "They sent me to talk sense into you. And you came because you always do what they tell you." Emily crossed her arms. "Let me guess. They want me to apologize, cancel my trip, and come back to Sunday dinners like nothing happened. They want their daughter back. They never had a daughter. They had free labor and a scapegoat." Emily kept her voice level with effort. "And I'm done being both." Marcus flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time Mom asked how I was doing? When's the last time Dad came to the bakery just to see me, not because he needed something? When's the last time Melissa treated me like a sister instead of hired help? We're family. Family doesn't crop you out of photos, Marcus. Family doesn't lie about who made the wedding cake. Family doesn't break into your apartment and demand you apologize for having boundaries. Emily felt her voice rising and forced it back down. You know what the saddest part is? I kept thinking if I just worked harder, did more, made myself more useful, you'd all finally see me. And it took me 28 years to realize I was already visible. You just didn't want to look. Marcus's face went red. You're being dramatic. Stop. Stop saying that. Emily's hands clenched into fists. I have spent my entire life being told my feelings are too big, my reactions are too much, I'm too sensitive. But you know what? Maybe I'm exactly as sensitive as I should be. Maybe the problem isn't that I feel things, it's that you all don't. That's not true. Really? Then tell me one thing about my life right now that doesn't involve the bakery or how I can be useful to the family. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's what I thought. Emily untied her apron. I'm going to Paris. I'm going to study and learn and figure out who I am when I'm not performing for people who've already decided I'm not enough. And when I come back, if I come back, I'm building a life that doesn't require your approval. Emily, you should go. I have inventory to finish. Mom said if you get on that plane, you're out. No more family dinners, no more holidays, no more pretending you belong. Marcus's voice shook slightly. She means it. Good. Saves me the trouble of having to cut you off myself. Emily headed toward the back, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you all figure out how to be happy without needing someone to look down on. Because that's all I ever was to you, someone to feel superior to. She left him standing there and didn't look back. In the kitchen, Emily pressed her palms against the cool stainless steel counter and focused on breathing. Her hands were shaking, but her chest felt lighter, like she'd finally set down a weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. Jenna appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah, I really think I am. Saturday afternoon, Emily showed up at the community center with $200 worth of ingredients and a determination to make this matter. 15 kids filed in, some eager, some skeptical, all of them watching her like they were waiting to be disappointed. Okay, Emily said, surveying them. Who here thinks baking is easy? A few hands went up. Wrong. Baking is chemistry with taste testing. One wrong measurement and your cookies are hockey pucks. 1 degree too hot and your chocolate seizes. But get it right? She smiled. Get it right, and you're basically magic. She walked them through the science of it. Why cold butter makes cookies chewy. Why room temperature eggs incorporate better. How the ratio of white to brown sugar affects texture and flavor. The kids started paying attention when she let them smell the vanilla extract and taste the difference between cheap cocoa and the good stuff. This is like drug dealing but legal, one kid said, and Emily laughed so hard she had to sit down. They mixed and measured and debated whether chocolate chips or chunks were superior. Emily moved between stations, correcting technique and answering questions and feeling more useful than she'd felt in months. These kids didn't care that her family thought she was a failure. They just wanted to learn how to make something with their own hands. Near the end, a quiet girl named Destiny approached her station. Miss Emily, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you always know you wanted to do this? Bake, I mean? Emily thought about it. I always loved it, but I didn't think it could be a real job until someone told me it could. My family thought I should do something more practical, medicine or law or business, but I couldn't stop thinking about pastries. What made you do it anyway? Honestly, I got tired of living a life that made everyone else comfortable and me miserable. So I went to Paris, studied under a chef who scared me half to death, and came back to build something that was mine. Emily met the girl's eyes. Best decision I ever made. Even though your family didn't support it? Emily wondered how Destiny knew that, then realized she probably didn't. She was just asking the question every kid from a family with expectations asked. Especially because they didn't support it. Because it taught me that my worth isn't determined by whether people approve of my choices. It's determined by whether I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Destiny nodded slowly, then went back to her station. When the workshop ended and the kids filed out with containers of cookies and flour in their hair, Robert pulled Emily aside. That was incredible. 3 kids already asked when you're coming back. I'm leaving for Paris on Tuesday. I know, but when you get back, if you want to do this regularly, we'd love to have you. The kids need role models who actually give a damn. Emily found herself nodding before she'd fully thought it through. Yeah, I'd like that. She drove home feeling full in a way she hadn't in years. Like she'd done something that mattered, not because it made her useful, but because it made a difference. Alexander was waiting at her apartment with takeout, and that look he got when he was proud of her but trying not to be obvious about it. How'd it go? Really good. Great, actually. There's this girl, Destiny, who reminds me of myself at that age. All that potential and no idea what to do with it. Emily kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch. I think I want to keep doing it. After Paris, I mean. Make it a regular thing. I think that's a great idea. Alexander handed her a container of pad thai. You're good with kids. I'm good at seeing people who feel invisible. Wonder where I learned that. They ate in comfortable silence, and Emily let herself feel the weight of the week, standing up to her mother, watching Marcus walk away, choosing herself over and over again, even when it hurt. I'm terrified, she said finally. Of Paris? Of all of it. Of failing. Of succeeding and realizing I could have done this years ago if I'd been braver. Of coming back different and not knowing how to fit into the life I built here. Alexander set down his food and turned to face her fully. You know what I think? I think you're going to go to Paris and work harder than you've ever worked. You're going to doubt yourself constantly and push through anyway. You're going to learn things that challenge everything you thought you knew about your craft. And when you come back, you're going to be the same Emily who cares too much and feels too deeply. But you'll finally believe you deserve to take up space. That's a lot of confidence in someone who was sitting in a cooler having a breakdown 5 days ago. Based on Joyce. I've watched you survive your family for 6 months. If you can do that, you can do anything. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. And I'll be here when you get back, whenever that is. Emily felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. What if I'm gone for 6 months? A year? Then I'll miss you and wait anyway. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. Alexander cupped her face in his hands. I love you. That doesn't come with conditions or timelines, it just is. So go to Paris. Take as long as you need. Figure yourself out. And when you're ready to come home, if Houston is still home, I'll be here. Emily kissed him then, pouring everything she couldn't say into the pressure of her mouth against his. Thank you. I'm scared. I love you too, even though I don't know how to say it. Please don't give up on me. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. Tuesday, he said. 3 more days. 3 more days. Sunday. Emily deep-cleaned her entire apartment and meal prepped for Jenna and finished every single task on her list. Monday, she triple-checked her passport and packed and repacked her suitcase and had a final meeting at the bakery where she cried in front of her staff and tried to play it off as allergies. Monday night, Alexander stayed over, and they didn't sleep much. Instead, they talked about everything and nothing. What Emily wanted to accomplish in Paris, what Alexander's week looked like, whether her apartment plants would survive with Jenna watering them once a week. You're stalling, Alexander said around 2 a.m. I'm savoring. You're terrified you'll get there and realize you made a mistake. Emily turned to face him in the darkness. What if I do? Then you come home. Paris isn't prison. You can leave whenever you want. His hand found hers under the covers. But I don't think you will. I think you're going to thrive. You're awfully confident for someone who's never seen me in my element. I've seen you talk about pastries like they're precious artifacts. I've watched you light up discussing the chemistry of bread. I've tasted what you create when you're trying to earn approval from people who don't deserve it. I can't wait to see what you make when you're creating for yourself. Emily didn't have words for what that meant to her. Emily didn't, so she kissed him instead and tried not to think about how much she'd miss this. The solid weight of him beside her, the way he made her feel seen, the safety of being with someone who wanted her to grow, even if it meant growing away. Tuesday morning arrived too fast and too slow all at once. Emily woke up before her alarm, heart pounding, and lay in the dark listening to Alexander breathe beside her. This was it. Today she got on a plane and left everything familiar behind. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something close to peace. Alexander drove her to the airport, helped her check her bag, and walked her as far as security would let him. At the barrier, Emily turned to face him, trying to memorize everything, the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the way he looked at her like she mattered. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For seeing me when no one else did. For believing I was worth the investment. For loving me before I knew how to love myself. Emily, I love you." The words came out easier than she expected. "I should have said it before. I love you, and I'm going to miss you, and I promise I'll come back. Maybe not the same, but I'll come back." Alexander pulled her against him, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Go be brilliant. Show them what you're capable of. And call me when you land. I will." One more kiss, deep and desperate and tasting like goodbye, and see you soon, all mixed together. Then Emily pulled away, grabbed her carry-on, and walked towards security before she could change her mind. She looked back once. Alexander was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching her with that steady gaze that had seen through her walls from day one. Emily waved. He waved back. Then she turned around and walked into her future, leaving her past and her family and everything that had made her small behind in Houston. The plane took off at noon, soaring over the city she'd lived in her whole life. Emily pressed her face to the window and watched Houston shrink beneath her. The familiar skyline, the sprawl of suburbs, the buildings getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared into clouds. Somewhere down there, her mother was probably still angry. Marcus was probably confused. Melissa probably hadn't noticed she was gone. And somehow, for the first time in her life, that was okay. Emily settled back in her seat, pulled out the notebook Alexander had slipped into her bag with a note that just said, "For new recipes and new dreams," and started writing. Paris was waiting, and so was the version of herself she'd always been too afraid to become. Paris hit Emily like a wall of memory and regret and possibility all at once. The moment she stepped out of Charles de Gaulle Airport into the gray spring morning, she smelled it. That particular combination of coffee and cigarettes and rain-wet stone that existed nowhere else on earth. Her chest tightened so hard she had to stop walking. A taxi driver honked at her. Emily grabbed her suitcase and kept moving. The apartment Alexander's friend had arranged was in the 6th arrondissement, tucked above a bookshop on a narrow street that tourists never found. Third-floor walk-up, slanted ceilings, windows that overlooked a courtyard where someone was always playing piano at odd hours. It was smaller than her Houston apartment and cost twice as much, and Emily loved it immediately. She dropped her suitcase, pulled out her phone, and called Alexander before remembering the time difference. It was 3 a.m. in Houston. He answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. "You made it." "I'm sorry, I forgot." "Don't apologize. I told you to call when you landed." She heard rustling, could picture him sitting up in bed. "How is it?" Emily walked to the window and looked out at Paris waking up. "It's exactly how I remembered and completely different at the same time." "That's cryptic." "The city's the same, but I'm different. Last time I was here, I was trying to prove I was good enough. This time I already know I'm not, and somehow that makes it easier." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "You're going to do great things there. Or I'm going to fail spectacularly and come home in a month. Either way, you tried. That's what matters." His voice softened. "Get some sleep. You've been traveling for 14 hours. "I'm too wired to sleep." "Then eat something and pretend to rest. Call me when you wake up for real." They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important before Emily finally let him go. She tried to sleep but gave up after an hour of staring at the ceiling, so instead she unpacked and showered and ventured out to find the boulangerie she remembered from years ago. It was still there, squeezed between a pharmacy and a wine shop, the same faded awning and chipped paint. Emily ordered a croissant and coffee in rusty French and sat at a tiny table by the window, watching Paris move around her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Bakery's fine. Stop worrying. Go be French." Then one from Alexander. "Sleep. I mean it." Emily smiled and took a bite of her croissant. It was perfect, buttery, flaky, exactly the right amount of salt. She'd forgotten how good simple things could be when they were done right. The first week was harder than Emily expected. She contacted 3 of her old classmates from Mercier's program, and 2 of them responded with polite but distant messages. The third, Sophie, invited her to coffee and spent an hour catching her up on who was working where, who'd opened their own places, who'd flamed out and gone back to their home countries with their tails between their legs. "And you?" Sophie asked, stirring sugar into her espresso. "What brings you back?" Emily considered lying, making it sound professional and planned. But something about Sophie's direct gaze made her tell the truth. "I needed to remember who I was before I let people convince me I was worthless." Sophie didn't even blink. "Good reason. You staying long?" "I don't know. As long as it takes, I guess." "Well, if you're serious about working, Arnaud Petit is looking for someone to help with his spring menu development. Doesn't pay much, but you'd learn a lot." Sophie scribbled a name and number on a napkin. "Tell him I sent you. He's an ass, but he's brilliant." Emily took the napkin with shaking hands. Arnaud Petit had a Michelin star and a reputation for destroying anyone who couldn't keep up with his standards. Working for him would be brutal. "Thank you," Emily said. "Don't thank me yet. He made 3 people cry last month alone." Sophie grinned. "But you trained under Mercier, so you're probably used to chefs with tempers." Emily called the number that afternoon, expecting voicemail or a secretary. Instead, Arnaud Petit himself answered, barking, "Quoi?" like she'd interrupted something critical. "Bonjour, Monsieur Petit. My name is Emily Dawson. Sophie Renard suggested I contact you about—" "You're American." "Yes, but I trained at—" "Can you start tomorrow?" Emily blinked. Yes?" 7 in the morning. Don't be late. We're testing a new orange blossom panna cotta, and if you screw it up, you're fired before lunch." He hung up before she could respond. Emily stared at her phone, heart racing, then called Alexander. "I got a job," she said when he picked up. "That's amazing. Doing what?" "I have no idea, but it starts tomorrow at 7, and apparently I might get fired by noon." Alexander laughed, that deep rumble that made her chest ache with missing him. "You're going to be perfect." She wasn't perfect. She was a disaster. Arnaud Petit's kitchen was chaos barely contained by skill and screaming. He ran it like a military operation, and Emily spent the first 3 hours convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. Her French was rustier than she'd thought. Her hands weren't as fast as they used to be, and she burned the first batch of panna cotta so badly Arnaud threw the entire tray in the trash and told her if she wanted to waste his ingredients, she could pay for them herself. But she didn't quit. She made the second batch perfectly, and the third even better. By the end of the week, Arnaud had stopped calling her the American and started calling her Dawson, which Sophie said was basically a term of endearment. Emily fell into a rhythm. Wake at 5, work until 3, stumble home exhausted and covered in sugar and burns from hot pans. Video call with Alexander while she ate dinner standing in her tiny kitchen. Sleep for 6 hours and do it all again. It was the hardest she'd worked in her life, and she'd never been happier. 3 weeks in, Sophie invited her to a dinner party at her apartment, a cramped place in the 11th with mismatched furniture and shelves overflowing with cookbooks. There were 8 people crammed around a table meant for 6, all of them chefs or food writers, or somehow connected to the culinary world Emily had left behind. "So you just walked away from your own business to come back here?" a food blogger named Mark asked, incredulous. "That's insane." "Probably," Emily agreed, "but I was drowning there, trying to run a bakery while my family treated me like their personal caterer, and I slowly forgot why I'd ever loved baking in the first place." "And now?" Emily thought about it. "Now I remember. Turns out when you're not making free wedding cakes for people who don't appreciate them, there's actual joy in the work." Everyone laughed, and the conversation shifted, but later Sophie cornered her in the kitchen. "You seem different," Sophie said. "Lighter, like someone cut strings you didn't know were there." "That's exactly what it feels like." Emily dried the dish Sophie handed her. "I spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. And coming here, it's like I finally gave myself permission to stop trying. That must have been hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the easiest, in a weird way. Once I actually made the choice, everything else just fell into place. Sophie smiled. Good for you. Most people never figure that out. A month became 2, then 3. Emily's French smoothed out. Her confidence rebuilt itself one perfect tart at a time, and she started to recognize the woman in the mirror again, the one who'd first fallen in love with pastry because it was magic you could taste. Arnaud offered her a permanent position in May. Emily almost said yes before remembering Houston, the bakery, Alexander, the life she'd left on pause. I need to think about it, she told him. Don't think too long. I have 3 other people who want this job. But his eyes were almost kind when he said it. That night, Emily video called Alexander and told him everything. The job offer, how good it felt to be pushed by someone who actually saw her potential, how Paris had given her back pieces of herself she'd forgotten existed. But, Alexander prompted, but Houston is home, the bakery is mine, and you're there. Emily pulled her knees to her chest. I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? Both, neither. I want to stay here and keep learning, but I also want to come home and apply everything I've learned. I want to see you, and not just through a screen. She stopped. I want to stop feeling like I have to choose between being who I was and who I'm becoming. Then don't choose. Come home when you're ready. The bakery isn't going anywhere, and neither am I. Alexander's expression was steady through the pixelated screen. But if you're asking my opinion, stay until you've learned everything you came here to learn. You've only been gone 3 months. Don't shortchange yourself because you're afraid of wanting too much. Emily felt tears burning. I miss you. I miss you too. But I'd rather miss you and know you're exactly where you need to be than have you come back early and wonder what you gave up. She stayed. Spring turned to summer. Emily worked under Arnaud and started taking on small private clients on her days off. Intimate dinner parties where she'd create custom dessert courses, birthday cakes for people who wanted something special. Word spread quietly through the expat community, then the wider Paris food scene. By July, she had more requests than she could handle. One evening, a woman named Claire approached her after a dinner party where Emily had created a 7-course dessert tasting. Have you ever considered teaching? Claire asked. Emily blinked. Teaching what? This. What you do. I run a culinary school in the 9th, and we've been looking for someone to head our pastry program. Someone who understands both technique and artistry. Claire handed her a business card. Think about it. The pay's decent, and you'd have full creative control over the curriculum. Emily took the card, feeling the now familiar pull between staying and going. That weekend, she met up with her old roommate from her first Paris stint, a woman named Isabelle, who now ran a small bistro in the Marais. They sat at an outdoor table drinking wine while the sun set over the Seine, and Emily told her everything. The family drama, Alexander, the job offers, the constant feeling of being stretched between 2 lives. You know what your problem is, Isabelle said, refilling both their glasses. You're still asking permission. You left Houston to escape people who made you feel small, but you're still letting them take up space in your head. Who cares what they think? Who cares if they'd approve of you staying or going? Do what you want. I don't know what I want. Bullshit. You know exactly what you want. You're just scared to take it. Emily sat with that for a long moment. Isabelle was right. She did know what she wanted. She wanted both, the growth Paris offered and the life she'd started building in Houston. She wanted to be the version of herself who'd survived her family and the version who'd thrived without them. She wanted to stop choosing and start building something that fit all of her. That night, Emily made a plan. She called Arnaud first. I want the permanent position, but I need to go back to Houston for 2 weeks to handle some things. Can you wait that long? 2 weeks, not a day more. But she could hear the smile in his voice. Then she called Claire. I'm interested in the teaching position, but I can only commit to 1 semester, fall term. After that, I need to go home. That works. Give me your best, and we'll see where it goes from there. Finally, she called Alexander. It was early morning in Houston, and he answered, sounding half asleep. I'm coming home, Emily said. Just for 2 weeks. There are things I need to handle in person. What things? Emily took a deep breath. I need to see my family. Actually face them instead of just avoiding them from across an ocean. And I need to figure out what to do about the bakery long term, because I'm not ready to come back permanently, but I'm also not ready to let it go. She paused. And I need to see you. Actually see you, not just pixelated you on a screen. When? Next week. I'll text you the flight details. I'll pick you up from the airport. The flight back to Houston felt different than the flight to Paris had. Less like running and more like returning to finish something she'd started. Emily spent most of the flight writing in the notebook Alexander had given her. Ideas for the bakery, recipes she'd learned in Paris, thoughts about what she wanted her life to look like when she finally stopped letting fear make her decisions. Alexander was waiting at arrivals, and the moment Emily saw him, everything else fell away. She dropped her bag and ran, and he caught her, lifting her off her feet and holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Hi," she said against his shoulder. "Hi yourself." He set her down but didn't let go. "You look different." "Good different or bad different?" "Confident different, like you finally believe what I've been telling you for months." He kissed her forehead. "I missed you." "I missed you too, so much." They went back to his place, a penthouse in Midtown that Emily had only seen once before, all floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture that somehow still felt lived in. Alexander made her coffee while she stood at the window looking out at Houston spread beneath her. "It looks smaller than I remember," she said. "You got bigger." Alexander came to stand beside her. "So, what's the plan for the next 2 weeks?" "First, I need to see the bakery. Then I need to talk to my family. Actually talk to them, not just send texts and avoid their calls." Emily turned to face him. "And I need to figure out what we are. Because I love you, and I'm not giving you up, but I also can't ask you to wait indefinitely while I figure out my life." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Alexander set down his coffee and took her hands. "I don't need you to have everything figured out. I just need you to be honest about what you want. I want both. I want to stay in Paris and keep learning, and I want to come home and build something here. I want to push myself with Arnaud and teach classes with Claire, and also expand the bakery into something bigger than it was." She met his eyes. "And I want you. All of it. I'm done choosing." Alexander smiled. "Then let's figure out how to make it work." The bakery looked exactly the same and completely different all at once. Jenna had kept it running perfectly. Better than perfectly, actually. There were new items on the menu, a fresh coat of paint on the walls, and a line out the door that Emily had never managed to generate on her own. "You've been busy," Emily said, looking around. Jenna grinned. "Turns out when you're not exhausting yourself making free family cakes, you have energy to actually market the business. We're up 30% in revenue since you left." 30%? "Yep. And I hired 2 part-timers to help with the load. Hope that's okay." Emily felt something warm settle in her chest. That's more than okay. That's amazing. They spent the afternoon going over numbers and new recipes and customer feedback. Jenna had implemented online ordering, started a subscription service for weekly pastry boxes, and reached out to 3 local coffee shops about wholesale partnerships. "I don't need you here to run this place," Jenna said bluntly. "I can do it, but I'd love to have you here for the creative direction. New recipes, seasonal menus, the fancy custom orders, the stuff you're actually good at instead of the administrative nightmare you hate." Emily stared at her. "You're saying I could stay in Paris and still be involved here?" "I'm saying you built something good, and it doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself to keep it alive. Trust your team. Let us handle the day-to-day while you do the things only you can do." Jenna paused. "Unless you want to come back full-time, but honestly, you seem happier in Paris. And this place runs fine without you hovering." It should have hurt being told her business didn't need her. Instead, Emily felt relief so profound she had to sit down. "I trained you too well," she said. "You trained me exactly right. Now go be brilliant somewhere else for a while." That evening, Emily drove to her parents' house in River Oaks. She hadn't called ahead, and her hands shook as she rang the doorbell. Her father answered. He looked older than she remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his mouth. When he saw her, something complicated crossed his face. "Emily." "Hi, Dad." They stood there for a long moment. Then her father stepped aside. "Your mother's in the living room." Helen was perched on the sofa with a magazine, every hair perfectly in place. When Emily walked in, she set the magazine down slowly. "Well, this is unexpected. I know, I should have called." Emily stayed standing, needing the option to leave if this went badly. "But I needed to say some things in person." "We're listening," her father said, settling into his armchair. Emily took a breath. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm not here to beg you to understand why I left or why I needed space. I'm here to tell you that I'm done trying to earn love that should have been freely given." Helen's face went tight. "Emily, please let me finish." Emily's voice stayed steady. "I spent 28 years trying to be good enough for this family, quiet enough, useful enough. And it was never enough because the problem wasn't me. It was that you'd already decided I didn't matter as much as Marcus or Melissa. Maybe you didn't mean to. Maybe you didn't even realize you were doing it. But that doesn't change the fact that I grew up feeling invisible in my own family." "That's not true," her father said. "Isn't it? When's the last time you came to the bakery just to see me? When's the last time you asked about my life without it being a preface to asking for something?" Emily looked between them. "I made Melissa's wedding cake for free. 3 nights of work, $2,000 worth of ingredients and labor. And you told everyone you'd hired a professional because you were embarrassed of me." Helen's hands twisted in her lap. You wanted me to be someone I'm not. Someone successful by your definition, not mine. Someone who didn't embarrass you at parties when people asked what I did." Emily felt tears threatening, but pushed through. "And I let you make me feel small because I thought that was the price of being loved by you. But I was wrong. Love doesn't cost that much. And if it does, it's not actually love." The room was silent. Finally, her father spoke. "What do you want from us, Emily?" "I want you to acknowledge that you hurt me. I want you to understand that erasure is a form of cruelty. And I want you to decide if you're capable of loving me for who I actually am instead of who you wish I'd be." She paused. "But I'm not waiting around to find out. I have a life in Paris now, a good life. And whether you're part of it or not is up to you." "You're choosing some man over your family," Helen said, voice tight. "I'm choosing myself. Alexander just happened to be the first person who saw me clearly enough to show me I was worth choosing." Emily walked to the door, then turned back. "If you decide you actually want a relationship with me, a real one, where you treat me with respect and I'm not just free labor, you know how to reach me. But I'm done begging for scraps from people who should have been giving me the whole meal." She left before they could respond. In the car, Emily's hands shook so badly she had to wait 5 minutes before she trusted herself to drive. But underneath the shaking was something solid, a foundation she'd built for herself that didn't require their approval to stand. She called Alexander. "I did it. How do you feel?" "Like I just set down something I've been carrying my whole life." Emily started the car. "I'm coming over. I'll be here." Marcus called 2 days later. Emily almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Silence stretched between them. "Mom told me you came by," Marcus said finally. "Said you gave them an ultimatum." "I told them the truth. If that felt like an ultimatum, that's on them." "Emily, they're our parents. They're people who happen to be related to me by blood. That doesn't give them the right to treat me like I'm disposable." Emily sat down on Alexander's couch. "Do you have something to say, Marcus? Or are you just calling to tell me how I disappointed everyone again?" "I'm calling to say I'm sorry." Emily's breath caught. "What?" "I'm sorry for not standing up for you, for going along with Mom when she'd make those comments about your career, for treating you like the family screw-up when you were actually the only one brave enough to do something you loved." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "You were right. We made you feel invisible, and that wasn't okay." Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Thank you for saying that. Are you really staying in Paris?" "For a while. Maybe a few more months, maybe longer. I'm teaching and learning and figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to please everyone else." "That's good. You deserve that." Marcus paused. "Will you come back for Thanksgiving? I know it's months away, but Sarah and we want to try again. Actually have you there as family, not as the person who brings dessert and leaves early." Emily thought about it. Maybe. Ask me closer to the date. I'm not making promises I might not keep. Fair enough. Another pause. I really am sorry, Em. I know, and I appreciate it, but apologies only matter if things actually change. I'm working on it. They hung up, and Emily sat with the conversation, feeling the complicated tangle of hope and caution and old wounds that didn't heal just because someone said sorry. Alexander found her on the couch 20 minutes later, still processing. You okay? Marcus apologized. Actually apologized, not the fake kind where they're really just asking you to forgive them without changing anything. That's good, isn't it? It's something. I don't know if it's enough yet. Emily leaned into him when he sat down beside her. Is it wrong that I don't trust it? It's realistic. One apology doesn't undo 28 years of damage. He has to prove he means it. Alexander's arm came around her shoulders. But it's a start, if you want it to be. Emily spent the rest of her 2 weeks in Houston splitting time between Alexander, the bakery, and long walks around the city trying to figure out what home meant when you'd outgrown the place you'd always lived. She had dinner with Jenna and her girlfriend, helped interview the new hires, and taught a weekend workshop at the community center that left her exhausted and fulfilled in equal measure. Destiny showed up to the workshop, taller than Emily remembered, and more confident. You came back, the girl said. I told you I would. Yeah, but adults say a lot of things they don't mean. Emily felt that land. I meant it, and I'll be back again. Maybe not for a few months, but I'm not disappearing. Destiny smiled, and it transformed her whole face. The night before Emily's flight back to Paris, Alexander took her to dinner at a restaurant they'd been to on their third date, a quiet Italian place in Montrose with checkered tablecloths and wine served in jam jars. I've been thinking, Alexander said over pasta neither of them was really eating. Dangerous. He smiled. I'm serious. You've been splitting yourself between Houston and Paris for 3 months now trying to make both work. What if you didn't have to? What do you mean? I mean, my company can run from anywhere. I've been doing most of my work remotely since you left anyway. He set down his fork. What if I came to Paris? Not permanently, but for a few months. We could have that time together instead of just stolen weekends and video calls. Emily stared at him. You'd move to Paris? For me? For us. And because I'm tired of sleeping alone and I've always wanted to spend more time there anyway. You gave me a good excuse. His hand found hers across the table. I'm not asking you to choose, Emily. I'm offering a third option where we both get what we want. What about your business? What about it? I have good people running day-to-day operations, and anything that needs my direct attention can happen over video call or quick trips back. The whole point of building something successful was so I'd have freedom. Might as well use it. Emily felt something huge and terrifying and wonderful expanding in her chest. You're serious. Completely. Unless you'd rather I stay here and pine dramatically. The pining is kind of cute. Emily. She laughed, and it came out watery. Yes. Yes. Come to Paris. Please come to Paris. They flew back together a week later. Alexander had rented an apartment in the 7th, bigger than Emily's place, with actual closets and a kitchen you could move around in. They spent the first 3 days barely leaving bed, making up for months of separation, and Emily let herself believe that maybe this was allowed. Maybe she didn't have to choose between love and growth. Maybe she could have both. Fall semester started, and Emily threw herself into teaching with the same intensity she'd brought to working under Arnaud. Her students were a mix, culinary school graduates looking to specialize, career changers hoping to break into pastry, a few brave souls with no experience who just wanted to learn. She pushed them hard, the way Mercier had pushed her, but with more kindness, more belief that they could rise to meet the challenge. One student in particular stood out, a quiet woman named Marie who worked 3 jobs to pay for the course and showed up every day with dark circles under her eyes and absolute determination in every movement. She reminded Emily of herself at that age, all potential and no confidence. You're good at this, Emily told her after class one day. Really good. You should consider going professional. Marie shook her head. I'm too old. I'm 34. Everyone else started when they were 20. I was 23 when I started formal training. Age doesn't matter. Commitment does. Emily handed her a card, Arnaud's contact information. Tell him I sent you. He's an ass. But if you can survive him, you can survive anywhere. Marie took the card with shaking hands, and Emily saw herself in that gesture. The disbelief that someone saw potential in her, the terror of actually reaching for what she wanted. Thank you, Marie whispered. Don't thank me. Just show up and do the work. At home, Emily and Alexander fell into an easy rhythm. He'd work from the apartment in the mornings while she taught. They'd meet for lunch at small cafes they discovered together, and evenings were for cooking dinner and talking through their days. It was domestic in a way Emily had never experienced, partnership without performance, love without conditions. I could get used to this, she said one night, curled against his side on their small balcony while Paris hummed below. Good. That's kind of the point. Alexander pressed a kiss to her temple. Have you thought about what happens when the semester ends? Some. Not enough. Emily traced patterns on his arm. Arnaud wants me to stay on permanently. Claire wants me to commit to another semester. And Jenna keeps sending me messages about expansion opportunities for the bakery. What do you want? I want to stop feeling like I have to choose. I want to build something that spans both places. Teach in Paris part of the year, run workshops in Houston the other part. Build a life that's big enough for all of me. Then do that. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You're making it complicated because you're still waiting for permission. But you don't need permission, Emily. You just need to decide and commit. He turned to face her fully. You've proven you can survive without your family's approval. Now prove you can thrive without anyone's permission at all. The words settled into her bones. 2 weeks before the semester ended, Emily got a call from Marcus. Hey, I know you said maybe about Thanksgiving, but I wanted to ask again, please come home, just for the holiday. Sarah and I really want you there, and I've been working on Mom and Dad. What does that mean, working on them? Means I've been telling them the truth about how they treated you, that you weren't being dramatic or oversensitive, that they actually hurt you, and they need to own it. Marcus sighed. It's been slow going, but Dad asked me for your number last week. Said he wanted to call, but didn't know what to say. Emily felt something shift. He actually said that? Yeah, I think he's starting to get it. Mom's harder. She's still stuck in the "you embarrassed us" narrative, but she's listening when I push back now instead of shutting me down. I don't know if I'm ready. I'm not asking you to forgive them. I'm asking you to give them a chance to try. That's all. One dinner, and if it goes badly, you can leave and I won't ask again. He paused. But Emily, you deserve to have a family who actually shows up for you, and we're trying. It's messy and slow, and we're probably going to screw it up a dozen times, but we're trying. Emily looked at Alexander, who'd been quietly listening to her side of the conversation. He nodded once. Your choice. I'm here either way. Okay, Emily said. One dinner. But I'm bringing Alexander, and if anyone says one passive-aggressive thing about my life choices, we're leaving. Deal. Thank you. Thanksgiving in Houston was awkward and tense and surprisingly not terrible. Emily's mother was stiff, her father distant, but they were trying to ask questions about Paris without it sounding like judgment. Trying to include Alexander in conversations instead of treating him like an interloper. Trying to acknowledge that they'd missed Emily without making it her fault for leaving. Melissa showed up halfway through dinner, took one look at Emily, and burst into tears. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I was so awful to you at my wedding, and before that, and just always. You made me a beautiful cake, and I didn't even thank you properly, and Mom kept saying you were being dramatic, but you weren't. You were just hurt, and I should have stood up for you. Emily pulled her sister into a hug and let her cry it out. It wasn't forgiveness yet. That would take time and consistent change, not just one emotional breakdown. But it was something. A crack in the wall they'd all built between them. After dinner, her father asked to speak with her alone. They went out to the back porch, where Emily had spent countless childhood hours hiding from the pressure of being someone she wasn't. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. A real one. Not the kind where I'm sorry you feel that way, but an actual acknowledgement that I failed you. Emily's throat tightened. Okay, I wanted you to be like Marcus. Successful in obvious ways, the kind of career I could brag about at the club. And when you chose pastry, I thought you were wasting your potential. I didn't understand that you were using it differently than I would have. He looked out at the dark yard. Your mother and I, we came from nothing, built everything from scratch. And we wanted to give you kids stability, success, the kind of life we didn't have. But somewhere along the way, we started measuring your worth by our definition of success instead of yours. That really hurt, Emily said quietly. I know, and I'm sorry. You built something remarkable with that bakery, and you're doing something even more remarkable in Paris. I should have told you I was proud of you years ago. He finally met her eyes. I'm telling you now. I'm proud of you, Emily, for being brave enough to walk away when we made you feel small, for building a life on your own terms, for not settling. Emily felt tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Can we try again? Slowly, on your terms, but can we try? Yeah, we can try. They flew back to Paris the next day, and Emily spent the entire flight processing. Her family wasn't fixed. Healing didn't work that fast, but they were trying, and that was more than she'd had before. How do you feel? Alexander asked. Cautiously hopeful, which is better than nothing. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you for coming with me. Always. The semester ended in mid-December. Emily's students presented final projects, elaborate displays of skill and creativity that made her chest swell with pride. Marie had gotten the job with Arnaud and was starting in January. 3 others had been offered positions at notable Paris restaurants. The rest were continuing their training or opening their own small businesses. You're good at this, Claire said at the final reception. The teaching thing. Students respond to you. I respond to them. They remind me why this matters. Emily watched her students networking with industry professionals Claire had invited. I'd like to do it again. Maybe in the spring? I was hoping you'd say that. How about we make it official? Guest lecturer position, you design the curriculum, you teach when you're in Paris, and we bring in others when you're not. It was exactly the kind of flexible arrangement Emily had been hoping for. Yes, absolutely yes. Christmas in Paris was quiet and perfect. Emily and Alexander hosted a small dinner at their apartment. Sophie and her wife, Arnaud and his partner, a few other friends from the culinary world. They cooked together, drank too much wine, and Emily felt the kind of belonging she'd spent her whole life chasing. Speech! It ought... Sophie called out when they'd finished dessert, a 7-layer chocolate creation Emily had spent 2 days perfecting. I'm not giving a speech. Speech! Speech! Emily stood, feeling ridiculous and loved in equal measure. Okay, fine, I just want to say thank you. 6 months ago, I was sitting outside my sister's wedding, feeling like the most invisible person on earth. And somehow I ended up here, surrounded by people who see me, really see me, not the useful version or the acceptable version, just me. So thank you for making Paris feel like home. To Emily, Arnaud raised his glass and everyone echoed it. Later, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up, Alexander pulled her into his arms. I have something for you, he said. We said no presents. This isn't a present. It's an investment. He handed her an envelope. Inside were papers, legal documents that took Emily a moment to parse. When she understood what she was looking at, her hands started shaking. You bought the building next to my bakery? I bought the space next to your bakery, with the intention of leasing it back to you if you want to expand. Teaching kitchen, event space, whatever you want to do with it. Alexander's hand settled on her shoulders. You kept saying you wanted something bigger. I'm giving you the room to build it. Emily couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at the papers that represented a future she'd barely let herself imagine. Why? She finally whispered. Because you've spent your whole life being told to think smaller, and I'm done watching you shrink yourself to fit other people's expectations. He tilted her chin up. Build something extraordinary, Emily. You've earned it. She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it. Thank you. I love you. You see me. Please keep seeing me. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. Emily pulled back. What? Marry me. Not now, not tomorrow, but someday. When you're ready. When you've built everything you want to build and you're sure this is what you want. His eyes held hers. I love you. I love who you are and who you're becoming. And I want to spend the rest of my life watching you become whoever you're meant to be. That's not a very romantic proposal. It's an honest one. Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Ask me again in a year, when I've proven to myself that I can build this life without losing myself in it. When I'm sure I can be someone's partner without becoming someone's project. Deal. Alexander wiped away her tears with his thumbs. 1 year? And then I'm asking again. And I'll probably say yes. I'm counting on it. Spring came to Paris with all the chaos and beauty it always did. Emily taught her second semester with more confidence, expanded the bakery remotely with Jenna's help, and started developing a program that would bring students from Houston to Paris for intensive summer workshops. She video called her family once a week, awkward conversations that were slowly getting easier as everyone learned how to actually talk to each other instead of just performing. In April, Emily got an email from Destiny. The girl had graduated high school, gotten into culinary school with a full scholarship, and wanted Emily's advice on specialization. I keep thinking about what you said, Destiny wrote, about building something that matters instead of just doing what people expect. I want to do that, but I'm scared I'm not good enough. Emily read the email 3 times before responding. The fear never goes away completely, she wrote back. You just get better at doing things anyway. And good enough is a moving target designed by other people to keep you small. Aim for excellent by your own definition, and stop asking permission to want big things. You're already good enough. Now prove you're brave enough. In May, Emily flew back to Houston for 2 weeks to help launch the expansion. The new space was everything she'd imagined. Teaching kitchen with industrial equipment, event space that could hold 50 people, office where she could actually work instead of balancing her laptop on her apartment counter. Jenna had hired 2 more staff members and was already booking private events 3 months out. The bakery itself was thriving, with lines out the door most mornings and a reputation that had spread beyond their neighborhood into the wider Houston food scene. You did this, Emily said, looking around. We did this, Jenna corrected. You built the foundation. I just expanded on it, and now we're building something neither of us could have done alone. They taught the first workshop together, 15 aspiring bakers learning French technique from Emily and business management from Jenna. It was chaotic and exhausting and exactly right. I think we should make this a regular thing, Jenna said afterward. Monthly workshops, rotating topics, build a whole program around it. That's a lot of work. Good thing there's 2 of us now, plus whatever staff we hire to help. Jenna grinned. Stop thinking small, boss. You taught me that. Emily flew back to Paris with her head spinning with possibilities. Alexander met her at the airport with flowers and that smile that still made her heart skip. How was it? Perfect. Overwhelming. I think we're building something really special. Emily took his hand as they walked to the car. How are you at long-distance business consulting? Because Jenna's going to need help structuring all these new programs, and you're the only person I trust to help her do it right. I think I can manage that. They spent the summer splitting time between Paris and Houston, building the kind of life Emily had only dreamed about, one where she didn't have to choose between different versions of herself, where she could teach and learn and create and love without shrinking any of it to fit someone else's expectations. In August, her family came to Paris for a week. It was still awkward, still sometimes painful, but they were trying. Her mother actually complimented her apartment. Her father came to watch her teach a class and teared up when the students applauded at the end. Melissa asked real questions about Emily's life and actually listened to the answers. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that mattered more. The night before they left, Marcus pulled Emily aside. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up on us completely. For giving us a chance to do better. He hugged her, quick and awkward, but genuine. You were right about everything, and we're lucky you still talk to us. You're getting better at this, Emily said. We're trying. Turns out admitting you were wrong and actually changing are 2 different things. We're working on the second part. After they left, Emily and Alexander sat on their balcony watching Paris move beneath them. How do you feel, Tsang? He asked. Grateful, tired, hopeful. Emily leaned into him. Like maybe I'm finally building the life I was supposed to have all along. You are. Alexander's arm came around her shoulders, and it's beautiful to watch. A year after that first conversation, almost to the day, Alexander asked again. They were in Houston, standing in the new teaching kitchen after a particularly successful workshop. The space was empty except for them, late afternoon light streaming through the windows. Emily Dawson, Alexander said, getting down on one knee right there among the flour dust and measuring spoons. You're brilliant and stubborn, and you care too much and feel too deeply. You build extraordinary things and you lift up everyone around you, and you make me want to be better than I am. Will you marry me? Emily looked at him. This man who'd seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway, who'd believed in her potential before she could believe in it herself, who'd given her space to grow even when it meant growing apart for a while, and felt certainty settle in her chest. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly right. They called their people, Jenna and Sophie and Marcus and her parents, everyone who'd been part of Emily learning how to choose herself, and celebrated with champagne Jenna had apparently been saving for exactly this occasion. You knew, Emily accused. I had suspicions. The man looks at you like you hung the moon. It was only a matter of time. Jenna hugged her tight. I'm so happy for you. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Paris, just close friends and family, an intimate dinner instead of the spectacle Emily's family would have preferred. Her mother cried, which was unexpected. Her father walked her down the aisle without trying to make it about him, which was progress. Melissa was a bridesmaid alongside Jenna and Sophie, and for the first time in Emily's life, she didn't feel like she was performing for her family's approval. She was just living, fully, messily, imperfectly living. The years that followed were good ones, not perfect. Emily still struggled with old wounds sometimes, still had to remind herself she was allowed to take up space, still caught herself shrinking to accommodate people who didn't deserve it. But she had tools now, and support, and a bone-deep certainty that she was enough exactly as she was. Sweet Haven Bakery expanded into a full culinary education center, offering everything from kids' workshops to professional development courses. Emily split her time between Houston and Paris, teaching and creating and building a legacy that was about more than just perfect pastries. She mentored young chefs, funded scholarships for students who couldn't afford formal training, and created opportunities for people like Destiny, kids who had the talent, but not the means. Her relationship with her family would never be what it could have been if they'd loved her properly from the start. But it was something. They showed up now, to her achievements, her struggles, her life. They asked questions and listened to answers. They were learning, slowly, how to love her for who she was instead of who they'd wanted her to be. And Emily was learning, even more slowly, how to let them. 5 years after leaving Houston, in a yellow dress with mascara streaking down her face, Emily stood in the teaching kitchen she'd built and looked around at everything she'd created. Students learning, laughing, making mistakes, and trying again. A business that thrived because she'd stopped trying to do everything alone. A family, blood and chosen, that actually saw her. Alexander came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is now. How I almost didn't get on that plane to Paris because I was too scared to choose myself." Emily leaned back against him. What if I hadn't? What if I'd stayed small forever? But you didn't. You chose yourself even when it was terrifying, and you built something extraordinary because of it. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too," Emily said, and meant it. Because that was the real ending, not the business or the marriage or the reconciliation with her family. It was Emily finally, fully believing that she was worth the space she took up, that her dreams mattered, that she deserved to be loved without having to earn it. She'd spent 28 years invisible, erased, convinced she was too much and not enough all at once. And then she'd chosen herself. Everything else, the bakery, the teaching, the love, the family slowly learning how to show up properly. That was just proof that the choice had been right. Emily Dawson was no longer invisible. She was exactly, imperfectly, beautifully seen. And that was worth every painful step it had taken to get here.